Hello, all of you. Welcome back to Debate Review. See, I made it work.
That rhymed. Yeah, that rhymed. That's awesome. I never rhyme my intros. That's great.
I was trying to figure out a way to make it. We talked last week about how I'm envious of your debate dissections, and I'm like, I got to find a way to make this work. If I can't come up with a better title, let's work with what we've got.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Thank you all so much for joining. Hello, Mark. Top of the morning to you.
Hello. Yeah, I don't know about top. I think middle of the morning for me is really where it's at. But hey, I got my coffee. I feel good. How are you doing?
I'm surviving. I had a time with my son. We actually watched the last episode of Amazing Digital Circus, which came out yesterday. At least on YouTube, it came out yesterday. It was in theaters slightly before, and it was interesting. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it.
Okay.
I don't know if you follow Digital Circus. It was a bit of a YouTube phenomenon. And we had them as guests at the Comic-Con that I run here in New York, NocoCon. They were guests last year. And then this year, they came out in the theater at the same time the convention was. So half our attendees were. It's fine.
Is that the one on Netflix? I think
yes, it was also on Netflix. They got really big.
Okay, I haven't seen it. Like Lynn and I saw it, and we're like, "Hey, we should watch that," and we haven't yet. It's one of those things on our to watch list kind of thing.
Well, now all 9 episodes are out. I'm still not clear why they made us wait an entire year between episodes 8 and 9.
Oh, look, yeah, it's I have my suspicions. I don't know for sure, but I think it's to extend people's subscription and to stop them from subscribing to a service, then watching what they want, like binge watching an entire series and then canceling the service. So if they stagger it, they might go, well, if enough people go, well, we'll just leave it up and watch, Wednesday or something in the meantime kind of thing, they will keep the subscription. They're more likely to. That's my suspicion. I cannot, that's my opinion. Don't sue me. It's just an opinion. But I think it is to get people into keeping the subscription rather than binge watching and canceling.
Maybe so. But yeah, I had a nice time with my son, and I wrote a bunch of scripts. I was weirdly productive first thing this morning. I popped up and I had ideas for 5 scripts. I made notes for 3, but the other 2 I wrote out completely. Like, what is happening? My brain caught a gear or something.
Nice.
Speaking of gears, we have as you're no doubt aware, we've been doing fundraiser stuff for our good friend Miranda. She's had to have a whole bunch of surgeries in the past couple of weeks, but we're making progress between us and all the other channels who are helping out. We're now at 61%, almost just a little over $2,400 US. So good job, everybody. Keep sharing, keep spreading it around, and if you're new, go donate. The link is pinned in the side chat. Help out our friend Miranda.
Help out Miranda. I went to I was in the chat for the fundraising show that you did, and I sort of came along and was like, oh yeah, I know Miranda. I haven't been plugging the link, but I certainly can if that would help. I might put it in. I do have a Discord, and so there is a sort of a community support section in there, which I can put it in there as well. So I'll probably grab that and then throw it in that part of Discord. Hold on, just stay with me. I'm fine.
Buttons and computers and all sorts of fun things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly think it's going really well, because I've seen obviously we've done a number of community fundraisers over the years, and some of them have had some relatively big name people involved, and overall this one seems to be doing the best out of any that I've been involved in. Spreading it out over a week probably helps, but even so, it goes to show that community makes a bigger difference than headliners,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Just my take, perhaps. I don't know. Speaking of celebratory stuff, see how I'm just transitioning today?
Oh,
In fairness, I do have some experience with transitioning, but
the segue is just smooth. It's as smooth as my head. It's just incredible.
we have a brand new debate today. It's well, okay, it's not brand new. It's a few years old. In fact,
Right.
I think it's from 2013, but it has a favorite of yours and mine, the former Reverend Dan Barker, versus the then current and I assume still Reverend Joe Boot. Great name, and they're doing their thing. This one is, I believe they're discussing, is there an afterlife, which is an
Right.
interesting topic. I hope it's
Yeah.
it's it's good anyway. Let's see,
Um,
if I recall, the openings are 20 minutes each, and then there's, I want to say, a 15-minute rebuttal, and then there's a, or maybe it's an 8-minute rebuttal and a 15-minute cross-examination. We'll find out together. It'll be fun.
right. Right. Is there an afterlife? It's a good debate topic. It is a good debate topic. It's just at the end is going to be, well, we don't know. We don't know. And like anybody saying they know absolutely surely that there isn't an afterlife is probably overconfident. But I think anybody saying there is an afterlife is overly confident as well. I think the best you can do is there is no reason to think there is. And that's about it. I don't see any reason to think that, humans have an afterlife. I don't see a good reason at all.
It seems to be the case with a lot of well, pretty much every supernatural claim is,
Yeah, pretty
we
much.
don't
Yeah.
know, but there's no reason to think so until there is.
Mm.
C'est la vie.
Joe Boot, that's got to be the most working class name I've ever heard in my entire life. It's like Joe Dirt or something, like seriously, my guy.
Oh, he had a story. So the reason we're starting 4 minutes in is because the moderator had to give the lay of the land, and for reference, he's
Mhm.
got this little traffic light thing sitting on his desk there. When it's green, you're fine. When it turns yellow is the 2-minute warning, and when it turns red, time is up. Even though the
Holy
speaker can't
shit.
actually see it from up there, but details, the crowd will know.
The crowd
And then Joe
knows,
Boot,
right.
yes. And then Joe
Um,
had to regale us with a little story about how his plane was delayed and he had trouble picking up his rental, and then he was in a car accident, and then he had to go to the hospital, and then he had to replace the rental car, and so he's very late, and but he did see the afterlife, so can confirm that it's real, and game over or something.
what the
I don't
fuck?
know how much of that is just play with the
I have
crowd.
never ever seen like a set of traffic lights in a debate. I have to say right now, I've never seen it. It's giving me Squid Game vibes kind of thing, stop go
Mhm.
kind of stuff. What the hell is happening here? Like, what is happening?
You got to go toward the light, maybe.
Oh wow, okay. Which one?
I know. Pick one. Channel your inner moth.
Okay.
Moth love lamp.
I love lamp.
Alrighty. So as always, the affirmative. Well, as usual, not always. We've seen some exceptions, but Joe, of course, is the affirmative. He says there is an afterlife, and he's gonna get us going here. So we'll see what's up. Hopefully,
Okay,
maybe.
let's go.
Probably.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Da da da.
Tonight's debate topic isn't an isolated question. And like all ultimate questions, it is answered only in terms of one's worldview or your perspective, your ultimate perspective on reality. It's dependent. The answer to this question is dependent or contingent upon our worldview, a set of assumptions
I
Well,
don't like where
no.
this is going already.
Yeah, no, I don't like where it's going, because the reality is not contingent on our worldview. Our worldview shapes how we perceive reality. So he's already badly off the mark. Like, if you have a worldview that dragons fly across the sky or aliens are real, it doesn't change what the reality is. He's got the wrong idea there. He's basically put the cart before the horse. Reality will be reality, and our worldview shapes how we perceive that reality. But reality doesn't change based upon our worldview, so it's not contingent on such. Our perception of reality is contingent on our worldview, but that does, our perception of reality is different from reality itself.
Quite so. The reification, confusing the map for the place kind of thing.
Yes.
But also, he seems to be setting up a kind of presup thing. Like, yes, I'm presupposing heaven, but you're presupposing not heaven. So we're kind of even, really.
So, for instance, you might have a mirage, right? Like a mirage kind of thing. Okay, so depending on whether you understand the science of how light refracts kind of thing, or whether you think that, magical pools of water can appear out of nowhere. It will color what you think that is, which is your epistemology. But the ontology, which is the actuality of things, is not based on that worldview. It just is. So he's absolutely making a category error here, because he thinks that what the reality is contingent on what you, how you view the world. And that is not the case. That is not the case.
Yeah, the best he's going to get out of this is a tu quoque, and I don't think the main issue, above and beyond all the fallacies and mistakes, is he can't demonstrate a positive claim this way.
Correct. But he's sort of, I think he's warming up to, well, I can't show that a life after death exists, but I believe it exists, and that's based upon my worldview. You believe it doesn't exist, and you can't show that it doesn't exist. There's a problem there, right? There's a massive problem there, and that's that the person who thinks that something doesn't exist should not have to show that it doesn't exist. The burden of proof is on you to show that it does, right? The default position is it doesn't till someone can show it. The reason why we do that is because if you want to be intellectually consistent with all claims, if you believe in something until someone can show it doesn't exist, you would have to believe in everything. Entirely contradictory. Like, this guy can't show a Brahma. You'd have to believe in that. That person can't show a God doesn't exist. You'd have to believe in that. This person can't show that aliens didn't impregnate your mother. Well, you'd have to believe in that too, right? You'd have to believe in all kinds of contradictory stuff, and it would be in order to be intellectually consistent. So that's why, in logic, the person making the positive claim is the one with the burden of proof on them. And in a debate, you'd expect them to come out with some sort of argument against why it isn't true. But he's setting up to say, well, you can't show that it doesn't exist. That's your worldview, that it doesn't exist. Yeah, but during a debate, we're looking at the epistemology of why you think it exists or doesn't. And Dan Barker, I would expect to say, something along the lines of, there's no evidence for it. We've investigated this. The anecdotes that people have come back from near-death experiences are different, right? Like, they seem to be tied to your cultural upbringing. So people who are Hindu will see Hindu stuff. People that are Christian will see Christian stuff. It seems to be cultural. And like, there's no other animal that people are claiming an afterlife for. Like, no one's saying, hey, when a fluke worm dies, it's going to fluke worm heaven. Why do we think this is true of humans?
All dogs do go to heaven, though. I saw a movie, and that's kind of evidence.
That's actually debated in like Christian circles so hotly that a lot of preachers won't go anywhere near the question. Because if you sort of say, well, all animals go to heaven, they haven't accepted Jesus, as far as we know. And so why do they get a free pass when humans don't? That's one side of the equation. And throughout history of the church, a lot of theologians have said, no, only humans go to heaven. But people really love their pets. And the idea of their pets just, you go on and your pet doesn't, is really objectionable to them. So they will get very upset. So most pastors say, we don't know, it's uncertain, because they don't want to touch it.
Yeah, there's also the theological implications of lesser animals having souls.
Right. Absolutely, yeah.
But you can't John Wick people and tell them that they're definitely not going to see their puppy in the afterlife. How can it be paradise without my little poopskikins?
Yeah, that is the attitude of people. So pastors, like I've heard so many pastors say, oh, it's uncertain, I can't really comment on it, and it is that balancing, well, I can't say that animals have souls, and I don't want to piss off my congregation.
Yeah, if I were to posit an afterlife, first of all, you have to believe in heaven, hell, and reincarnation simultaneously under the thinking that's being built up so far.
Yes, yep.
But if I were to posit an afterlife, if you earn your way in there or you're given grace or whatever the case may be, for it to be paradise for you, you need all your loved ones. For it to be paradise for them, they need all their loved ones. And for it to be paradise for them, they need all their loved ones. And so like one person getting in would entail bringing in effectively the entire human race, except for the absolute assholes who are loved by no one.
Well, it's interesting, right, that the average Christian has a real big issue with their dog not getting into heaven, but they don't care if some gay guy is tortured for the rest of eternity. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, like you put a higher priority on your dog than you do on your fellow humans. And I kind of understand why sometimes, it's like humans, dogs can be better people than humans can, but at the same time, it's like, why don't you have a problem with anybody being tortured for eternity? Like, why don't you have a problem with that? No, they deserve it.
It's so weird. It's such like, I don't know. This is why people think that this religion is a cult, even though it's a giant cultural thing. Definitionally, it can't be a cult. But like, this whole thing about, some people are tortured forever, but also God is the embodiment of love. Like, these are completely contradictory ideas. By forcing you to accept both of them, it breaks your brain a little bit. And that's how they can compel you to do certain things that don't make sense or actively seem harmful. It's a mechanism for control to initiate you into the abuse, so that you too become an abuser,
Right.
That we have about the world and through which we will interpret any evidence that is given to us. Nobody comes to this question without a worldview bias, including myself. We all have a set of interconnected beliefs.
I don't think that's true either. That's just a thing that very biased people say, is to say everyone else has a bias. Now, philosophically, you could argue everyone has a bias, but the first time I asked this question, I was 4 fucking years old. I'm like, what, Grandma, what happens when we die? I just wanted to know the truth. I didn't have a bias.
And it's interesting. I was in this chat the other day. I went over to this sort of open panel, and it wasn't they were very aggressive. I don't know why. It just seemed to have a big chip on their shoulder. But I was arguing sort of morality and objective morality, right? And I sort of said, I'd like there to be a objective reality. I'd like a morality. Sorry, I'd like there to be an actual, hard law of what is right and wrong. That would be nice, that we don't have to, have all this subjective interpretation going on. And after I left, like just as I was heading out, one of them said, oh, for someone that wants objective morality, you're very resistant to it. And it's like, yeah, I'm very resistant to things that I want, as I should be. It's because if I want something to be true, we realize what bias we fall into. Because if we want it to be true, we should be the most critical of things that we want to be true, and only accept them when there's enough evidence for them. Not, well, I'd like that to be true, so it's true. Like, that is a really bad way to think. So I think that, yes, everybody has biases, but that is what critical thinking is for, right? It is to try and eliminate the biases that you have. And some people do this very well. They will, the more they want something to be true, the more they'll question it. The more that the group tells them it's true, the more they question it, right? Like, they don't just go, well, everybody else thinks that way, why don't I? There's ways we can address bias. Peer review is addressing bias. It's sharing it with other people and asking them to give their critical, unfiltered opinion on it, because we know bias exists. So, and there's another way of doing bias, which is, well, I'd like there to be a heaven, so why not?
Sure. What is it? Terry Goodkine's first rule, that people believe any lie either because they want it to be true or because they're afraid that it's true.
Right. That's interesting. Didn't he write the Sword of Shannara books, Terry Goodkine?
Sword of Truth. Terry Brooks is Sword of Shannara.
Oh, yes, yeah, you're right. There's too many
I know,
Terrys
all
out
these
there.
Terrys. What's really weird is that the second book in the Sword of Truth series was called The Stone of Tears, and the second book in the Wheel of Time was called The Stone of Tear.
Oh, interesting.
It's there's so much overlap in fantasy at that period in time. It was very strange.
Yeah, very weird. But I mean, yeah.
I was just going to say, I digress.
About reality. And based on those beliefs, we will assess what we think is plausible, what we think is possible, the kind of evidence that we think is credible. So we will interpret any evidence given to us in light of our worldview. And so the question of life after death is dependent upon more basic questions that I think need to be addressed first. So tonight's discussion, tonight's debate, is actually a clash not over an isolated bit of evidence or a lack thereof of near-death experiences, nor is it a question of what we would prefer to be the case autobiographically about life after death.
Well, I'm so glad that we're not going to make it about what we would prefer to be the case, despite how he opened.
Yeah.
In fairness, he's still opening.
Yeah. Let him cook.
Yeah, for sure. All right. One quick note, though.
Are you about to engage in blasphemy?
There we go.
Right.
We got to get that out of the way.
It's actually a debate about the nature and character of reality itself and the nature of human knowledge. It's a religious question, inescapably. Now, I hope you will not be offended if I tell you that even if you're an atheist...
Hang on. It is not a religious question inherently, no. No, he's trying to set it up like, oh, science can't have an opinion on the nature of reality because it's religious. No, absolutely not. So what he's sort of saying is that whenever you're talking about reality, like the actuality of things, how things in fact are, you're talking about something called ontology. It's basically a state of affairs that it's sort of a hypothetical kind of is there, what reality actually is, regardless of anything else. But we can't access that directly. And this is sort of philosophical stuff. What we have to do is use epistemology, which is how we know that things are the way they are, or whether, or how we claim to know, or how we, or why we believe it. That's epistemology, our methods in finding it out. So, I think I would say that this is a metaphysical question, right? So metaphysical deals with the foundations and the questions about reality or actuality, right? Like it deals with it. So sort of separating ontology into epistemology. It's sort of metaphysics, right? You're talking about the categorization foundations and the sort of the traits of reality, right? Metaphysical does not equal religious. Okay, it does not equal supernatural. It just means that you're talking about how to find this out. It's just a sort of one step removed from what reality actually is. You're talking about how to find out reality. That's one example. That would be metaphysics, right? You're not talking about what it is. You're talking about how to find it out. That's metaphysics. If you're talking about where reality came from, that's metaphysics. You're not talking about the reality itself. You're talking about it, kind of thing. It's meta, right?
It's the meta discussion. It's what is reality? What does it mean to exist?
Yep.
As opposed to what you find in some of the new age things. Oh, well, you just need to get the quantum vibrations of your crystals tuned just so, and it'll cure your toxins, probably.
But that does not mean that it's supernatural. There is entirely materialist, naturalistic metaphysics available out there, and science crosses over into metaphysics when you're talking about cosmogony, for instance, the origin of the universe. It's a metaphysical discussion.
Yeah. And I really like to disambiguate those because oh my goodness. So I've told the story before about how I got my first honorary degree. And along the way, I picked up a master's in metaphysics, but because it was through a seminary, it was more along the lines of how did God create the universe sort of stuff, rather than why is there a universe? And it kind of was halfway between physics and the new age woo-woo, and it bothered me. I'm like,
I can imagine. If you go into like an accredited sort of philosophy school, they will talk about metaphysics, and even the theistic ones will talk about metaphysics in terms of sort of the nuts and bolts kind of thing, like foundations, origins. It won't be talking about any one worldview or any one perspective, or this is just a religious question. No, it really is just a question of that anybody can be engaged with. It's just religious apologists have tried to co-opt it, that anytime you're talking about metaphysics, you're talking about God. That is not the case. Absolutely not. Hell, even I know that who was it? Answers in Atheism. He doesn't like the word metaphysics because to him it suggests supernatural, and it's like, no, it absolutely does not. It absolutely does not.
Yeah, Mike is very much a concrete, solid, hard science guy. I don't think he even likes psychology that much.
I wouldn't. I don't think so. I know that he hates abstractions. Like, he doesn't like abstractions, and it's like, I don't know why. It's very strange.
Very, very data based. I mean, you can get data from, like, it's not important. We could just ask him the next time we see him.
You have a God concept. That is, you have an idea of the divine per se. That is, you believe in some sort of non-dependent reality. You believe in something in which everything else depends. Now,
what? No. I have a concept of Super Mario. It doesn't mean I think it exists. What are you talking about? Okay, this is very pre-suppy. Like, there's a lot of things I have a concept of that I don't think actually exist. There's a million things that you have a concept of Allah, doesn't mean you think he exists. You have a concept of Buddha, my guy. That doesn't mean you think he exists. This is one of the worst arguments I've ever heard. And I've heard it before.
Internationally recognized, well, master debater. I know we use that facetiously sometimes, but that's how the fella is billed. He's one of the best, and he's just diving into precept. Now, there's another direction that this is somewhat fraudulent. While it may be true for him, and he's assuming it's therefore true of everyone else, there's probably a fallacy for that too. But not all of us do believe that there is one thing on which all other things depend. Obviously, I don't know, but I'm fairly confident that everything depends on multiple previous things. And as far as I can see, there's no limit to that. There is no single something somewhere off in the dim and misty, as far as I can tell.
Well, there may be, there may not be. That's the thing. There's a few different interpretations of so what he's doing is kind of I mean, it does sound a bit like the Darth Dawkins, what ultimate cause do you have to ground your metaphysics kind of thing, like you have to have one ultimate cause. And there is a quantum monism idea that we keep looking for the smallest quantum particle kind of thing, or the smallest particle, and we keep going smaller and smaller and smaller. Some physicists have postulated, and this is just a postulate, right? This isn't like set science, but they have sort of proffered that it may be that everything is quantum entangled, and therefore everything is just one thing. And the smallest category of something is the entire universe. Now, I don't believe that. There's not a lot of evidence for it, but it is something thrown out there as possible. So there may well be just one thing. There may not be that. Like, we don't know.
Okay,
but this
fair
sort
enough. Because I've seen postulations along that line, and it does kind of make sense because,
right,
everything is floating in time space, and from a certain point of view, matter is just photons stuck to a point. It's going around in very tiny little circles chasing its tail. And so if everything is photons, and photons are just waves on the surface of space-time, then everything is just anomalies in the surface of space-time, and therefore there's only one thing, space-time.
Right. But we don't know that's true. Like, we don't know for sure. It's just something that a couple of physicists have thrown out and said, hey, this is a quantum monism perspective, which is fine. Like, they can postulate all they want. I think that's healthy. I think that's great. But, we should reserve our belief in that until there's enough evidence for it. That's really what we should do. But at the same time, like, you do have a philosophical problem, and I know how much you just absolutely love philosophy, Ember. That if you're looking for multiple causes going back, you get into an infinite regress problem, right? That this causes this, these multiple then cause this, what causes them kind of thing. There's nothing particularly problematic with a first cause being first causes. It just is a lot more complex because you're sort of saying instead of one initial cause, you've got multiple that sort of have always been there. I don't think there's a problem with that. It's just I would look for one singular cause kind of thing. And so the universe being in a atemporal state, that's just one cause kind of thing. The universe just always has been here in some form, and all it's done is change state. But really, what I'm getting to is that even if you believe in one cause, it doesn't mean that cause is God. And it doesn't mean because you have a concept of God. And this is something in a debate where somebody was sort of saying, hey, God exists because you believe that the concept exists. That's a category error. Believing that a concept exists doesn't mean that you believe the thing itself exists. And this causes a lot of problems for theists. And apparently this guy.
Yeah, some people don't like it. It's interesting, though, because sometimes it works the other way around. Like, they'll believe in a concept, but not the concrete the thing actually exists. It's weird. Maybe it'll come up. We'll see.
For me, everything depends upon the God of the Bible, God of Scripture. So that the basis of my worldview is the triune God of the Bible. For Dan, I suspect, it is matter and energy upon which everything else depends. For others, some people believe in some form of impersonal being, some kind of impersonal force. But really, there are only two worldviews as you approach this question. There are two perspectives on reality, and to help you remember them, I'm just going to call them the oneist and the twoist worldview. The second...
no, they're the oneist and the zeroist.
I mean, maybe he's got a reason for it, and maybe it'll be funny. I just love how he's just... It came up on Ed's show, The Rabid Atheist, yesterday. He was doing a review because it was Juneteenth in the middle of Pride Month, so he was reviewing some apologists who were saying some silly things about race and LGBT stuff. And one of them was Mark Driscoll. And Mark Driscoll was making a black and white fallacy, much like we see here. There's really only good or bad. There's only two things, you know. They just lay the black and white fallacy out there. But on the screen behind him, Mark Driscoll said, it's black and white in a rainbow world, you know. And I'm like, I've never seen them actually put the fallacy they're doing on the screen before.
Right. It's a black and white fallacy. Yeah. Yeah. And like someone mentioned in the chat, like the United States are the good guys. I don't know if it's true. Yeah, John Darwin in the chat said that. And I think that it's a lot like that. That's kind of a black and white thing. Like things are rarely, you know, you might say this is good, this is bad. I think the people of America are generally good. You know, it's so much more complicated than that. I think that I think that the administration is fucking terrible, but you know, that doesn't mean that the entire the country itself is the good guys or the bad guys. Like that is a really poor way of looking at it. You know, it's like with Palestine, for instance, the Hamas is definitely terrible. They're absolutely they've done terrible things, but that doesn't make the entire country of Palestine the bad guys, right? Like that's a problem. We can't look at it like that. And so I think this comes from, like, it was really funny. I think it was once on the Atheist Experience. Somebody made an argument for God, and then they said, well, we know it's not polytheistic. And he sort of said, well, you know, it's simpler being one than two, you know, or multiples. It's simpler. And I think it was Matt Delahanty that said, you know what's simpler still? Zero.
Yeah.
That's even simpler.
And perfectly round, just the way God likes things.
The twoist worldview is the one that I hold to. Reality is divided into two. There is created reality, and there is uncreated reality. There is the being of God, and then there is everything that he has created outside himself that depends upon him.
I thought he said he was into the God of the Bible, but now he's talking about Odin's mythology. Oh, sorry, I'm ruining his thing, aren't I?
No. I mean, it's his theology that he gets from the Bible, but it has to be extrapolated upon. But if you think that God created everything, then the two categories are God and everything else. So usually they put this in terms of a creator-creature distinction kind of thing. Everything that God has created, and then God who was not created. And it makes it's trying to make a category that we don't have to tell you where God comes from. Because that's the problem. That when you start saying, hey, everything that exists needs a origin, it needs a sufficient cause, then the question then becomes, well, where did the God come from? And in order to absolve them from this, they say, well, the God wasn't created, it always existed.
And then we say, you know, it's even simpler if the universe always existed, but we don't know. Of course, we do have an answer to where the God came from. It's nil, the great not God and creator God.
Yeah.
Right in the name, you know, it's entailed. You can't get a
Yeah, and
creator
that-
god without a creator of creator gods. Duh.
Right, and that would make nil part of the creator. But I think this is really reductive because he's basically saying, hey, the creator can't be created from something. And we know that that's not true for almost every organism on Earth. I've created stuff. I was created by my parents. Like it just seems ridiculous to sort of say, hey, I'm going to make this distinction because I get what he's saying. It just seems really silly. Well, what's the other one that there's just one thing? Okay. There's just created.
Existence. It exists. And to its credit, we can generally demonstrate it exists. I mean, not to the level of certainty that we get from cogito ergo sum, but we're pretty certain.
Well, I'm wondering why he's avoiding sort of necessary and contingent things. So in philosophy, usually you refer to something necessary as being it doesn't, and usually it's relative to one another, but in terms of the universe or all of reality, necessary would mean it does not require something to make it. It's not contingent on anything. Whereas a contingent thing needs something to enact it in order to exist, right? So for instance, I am contingent on my parents. My parents are not contingent on me, but they are necessary for me, right? So that it usually describes relationships. But when theists get into it, it usually means of reality, or of the universe. So like God is necessary to the universe. It's not contingent upon the universe. It would exist even if the universe didn't exist. But I think he's avoiding those terms and he's using creator because he's trying to smuggle in the God, smuggle in the agent. Because even if you did say, hey, there's two categories of things, a contingent thing, which is all of reality, or all of the universe, and a necessary thing, which was, some quantum atemporal state that just existed forever until it formed the universe, like his argument doesn't give you a God. So he's trying to smuggle the God in there as being, hey, it is the cause, but not caused by anything in the universe. He's trying to smuggle it in.
Oh, for sure. We got to do our smuggling because that's how we avoid taxes. That's why churches are tax-free. Yep.
Yes.
Things visible and things invisible. Minds, bodies, seas, laws of thought, things visible, things invisible. The onist view of reality, the other worldview by contrast, essentially says that all reality is one. There is no creator-creature distinction. We live in a universe of total flux, of total change. There's no God that transcends energy and matter in the universe.
Maybe.
Yeah, a bit of column A, bit of column B. I don't know. My brain's going in several directions with it because I'm looking for things specifically to disagree with, but I'm also looking for things to agree with, and I'm also looking for the way he's trying to interconnect everything, and it's interesting.
Actually, it's really a multiverse. You can't have a universe in a world without God. There is no unifying principle in the midst of diversity. There is just diversity.
No, it doesn't have to be a multiverse. No, sir, it doesn't have to be a multiverse. It's possible. It's possible it is, but it doesn't have to be. Like, that's the thing.
I would argue
go
that
ahead.
it's his version of a theistic worldview that entails a multiverse because the God has to have somewhere to stand while it creates the universe. It has to exist in some meaningful way. So even if wherever the fuck the God is beyond our comprehension, there's still an is there, and therefore it qualifies as a universe.
Yeah. Or it qualifies as some other dimension, right? It has to.
Yeah.
But is it a dimension of our universe? Well, they don't say so. They say like God is outside of the universe, right? Or at least the sort of William Lane Craig thing that God is spaceless, timeless. He's outside of the universe while being present in it at all times.
That'll never not be funny. I wish I had clips of just Craig. Alas, I only have like the 3-minute long assorted theist compilation.
Fair enough.
I'll have to re-edit it at some point.
Yeah.
Now, I think Dan's version, from what I've never debated Mr. Barker before, I hope you don't mind me calling you Dan, Mr. Barker, and I've never debated the topic of life after death before, but I think Dan is presupposing a materialistic view of reality. Now, we cannot prove our God concept, our most basic belief, directly, nor can we prove secondary beliefs like life after death directly. We can only look at them.
Aunt Jer makes an excellent point. But first, Left-Handed Jedi, member for 30 months.
Woo!
That's pretty impressive. That's I think I need a sound effect for that one. Let me see here.
Damn right.
That's not a bad one. Yeah, hell yeah.
Force user. I will say that. I'm sorry, all other Force users out there. I'm sorry. My favorite Force user.
I know all you other Force users got some catching up to do. Andrew says, Ember, you might need a space lass emoji. And that is a fantastic suggestion. However, we kind of already have one.
What, we do?
Because Just from How to Rule an Asteroid has her own emoji.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But I'm not averse to more. We'll see how it goes. I still have a few placeholders in there. So, you know, and enjoy them while you can. Like, my goodness, I've still got one of my original channel logos is this E symbol. It's Ember as an element because it's so old it's before nil. Yeah. So it's kind of a placeholder. C'est la vie. But what's not a placeholder and what's good for emojis, Left-Handed Jedi gifted 5 Ember ships. Thank you so much, Jedi. Those went to Horsepipe, Rawl73. My apologies if I mess up anybody's name. My monitor has very tiny letters. Dylan B, Arch Reddish, Mr. Chad. Hell yeah. And Ms. Non Sequitur, Aaron. Very cool. Thank you so much, Jedi. Everybody do enjoy all the fun custom emojis, including the weird things that I've been mentioning, and all there's a bunch of emojis. So, you know, do enjoy, plus all the other assorted perks. Hooray.
Indirectly. For a start off, there is a poverty of empirical evidence to start talking about life after death. As far as I'm aware, neither myself nor Dan have gone beyond the grave, empirically observed what is after death, and that you haven't either. That makes it pretty difficult to start offering direct evidence. To prove anything requires that you accept an undoubted starting point. But since we don't have all the facts of the universe none of us, we have to take certain things on faith. We all believe certain things in order to make sense of reality.
No. I mean, so there was a debate last night as well about is there a possible thing as evidence-based faith? And the atheist Alan was of the opinion that no, faith is what you do when you don't have evidence. The theist had a little bit more of a complicated argument. It was more of the apologetics flavor of things, which is excusegetics, to be clear. But I had sort of an idea over the course of the debate that faith doesn't necessarily mean belief without reason. It means holding to your promises, keeping the faith, you know? But that said, I don't think you have to have faith, either of the believing without evidence or the keeping promises kind. You can exist without either.
Well, I think that even just within Christianity, or you know, faith is used differently by so many different. I have got so many different responses, like people saying, "Well, faith is confidence based upon the evidence," and I'm like, well, okay, if you're defining faith as that, okay, but it doesn't meet up with what's in the Bible. The Bible sort of says very clearly that faith is the evidence of things unseen, and the substance of things hoped for. That's what it says in the Bible. Okay, if you're going by the biblical definition of faith, other definitions, okay, you've got your own I don't know why you wouldn't call it confidence, but never mind. It's faith with evidence, okay. But that's what the Bible says. And it actually, a Christian pointed this out, that it's a paradox, right? Like substance of things hoped for. Things hoped for don't have substance.
Mhm.
And the evidence of things unseen don't have evidence, right? It's basically saying it is finding evidence where there's no evidence, and substance where there is no substance, which is bad. That's a terrible way to evaluate the
That's the point. Is it can be interpreted several ways, which is one of the reasons that the church made sure to keep it in there, because it's more useful. But I think it was originally possibly intended to be sort of like a metaphor or a warning, like believe, but faith isn't the same as belief. If you're only having faith, then you don't have a grounding for the things that you believe, because Christians used to care what they believed in was true. To an extent, anyway. Some of them, I suppose. Ed, the rabid atheist, of whom I was just speaking, says that the real problem is that there's so many clips to go through. It might take a while. So Ed's getting ready to like make a collection of silly theist clips. What I did is I just started saving ones that jumped out to me. Like I went back for a few classics, like God killing all the children was a great blessing, actually, that sort of stuff. But there were a couple that came up all in the same week or two, and I was like, all right. And I just started saving clips, and once I had enough for a minute, I did the first version, and then I just kept adding clips on as I came across them. It's stagnated for a little while, but partly because there's stuff in there that's not actually directly related to theists, just the entailments of the more aggressive forms of the ideology, the way people like what Craig says, even though he isn't like a pro-genocide person, the things he says feeds into the people who are pro-genocide people, So it kind of just snowballs. It's an adventure. I don't know. Maybe I'll play it later as an example in case you haven't seen it.
Well, my problem with what Craig sort of says is that he sort of takes it as, well, in the Bible, these people did stuff, but they did it because of God allowed them to, kind of thing. God gave them an exception or some kind of blessing in order to do so, because it was the best for everybody, basically, all of this horrible stuff. The problem that I have, and he wouldn't support this kind of action, right? Like if somebody said, hey, I want to wipe out the XYZ in this country, he probably wouldn't support it. Okay, I don't think William Lane Craig would go, yeah, I'm all on board for a genocide or whatever. The problem comes that if, there's plenty of people that have done awful things and they claim because God told them to. How do you actually evaluate who is getting the command by God and who isn't, right? How do you actually find that out? Well, you can't. Like, how do we know that, what was that Japanese cult that did sarin gas on a train? How do you know that God didn't bless and endorse that? How do you know? They claimed it, but there seemed to be no way to find out if a God actually did or not. And so that's my problem with Craig. He's sort of saying, hey, there are exceptions where this is warranted because God wants it, but not giving you any way to judge what God wants.
But I can hear voices when I pray, and then I feel the burning in the bosoms, and maybe it's just heartburn. Maybe it's, as Dickens said, a piece of mustard, perhaps. But it could be God. You can't prove it isn't. I keep beating up. So I had to wear headphones, even though my ears are messed up, for Truth Wanted several weeks ago, and they're still dangling from my thingy because I may need them tomorrow. Because Jess, the space lass herself, and I will be over on Truth Wanted for the Sunday night call-in show. Let's Talk. We're going to do a solstice special. It'll be neat. But both Jess and I have difficulty with our ears, so we both use speakers. And sometimes our speakers create a feedback thing. It's not really a feedback, but whatever. In any case, I still have my headphones out, but I keep slapping them. It'll be c'est la vie.
The only person who could actually know all things from the end to the beginning of the world would be the God who created and knows and governs all things. That individual would, of course, be God. So knowledge can only begin with knowledge.
That sounds circular. And also,
that is
no.
circular. Yeah, knowledge can only begin with knowledge.
Like,
I get that we gain knowledge of things by understanding, like building on our current understanding. I get you. But there's got to be some endpoint to that, right? Where you have no understanding of things and you must. I think that knowledge comes from our understanding and also from observations of the reality around us. Okay, so I'm an empiricist. I think that knowledge ultimately rests in our senses, basically, what we can figure out from what is around us, ultimately. And he might be a idealist, which means that he thinks that knowledge starts from the mind. I would disagree. I think that beliefs can start in the mind, but I think that when you confirm it actually is in some way you're using your senses.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to babies. Babies don't start with knowledge. It's just observation at that point.
Correct.
You know, it's what you can figure out about the world around you. And also, real quick side note, Miranda's making progress. We're now at 2830, 71%. So really good job, folks.
I just want to give a big thank you to everybody donating to this. And, you know, I can't imagine what it'd be like living in a country where your government just abandons you to illness and doesn't provide anything, any support whatsoever. I would hope that people donate, because if they are in the same situation, I would hope that we would support them. So I want to give a big thank you to everybody that does. It's not easy. I totally get that. And, you know, we all dig deep. And I gave because I would hope that if I was in a country with no healthcare, that people would help support me. I would really hope so. It's horrible, though. It's absolutely horrible. You know what? I was watching this thing and somebody said that their biggest shock on going to Australia was everybody looked young, kind of thing. Everyone looks really young in Australia. And they said maybe it's the nutrition, maybe they eat better. And I'm thinking, no, it's probably less stress. You know, stress will age a person. You ever see Obama when he was president, after and before? Stress will age a person, like seriously.
Yeah, stress, healthcare, nutrition's part of it. I'm sure it's the Vegemite has something to do with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I eat a shovelful every day, as do all Australians.
As is required by law.
Required by law, yes. It's the Vegemite Empowerment Act. Yes, absolutely.
But if you're just joining us, Miranda's fundraiser is pinned in the side chat. If you can give, please do. If you can't, or if you already did, please consider sharing, because it does help. We're a relatively small community in a relatively small part of YouTube. You can see we're making a difference. And I thank you very much, because Miranda's been a fantastic part of the community, always trying to help people whenever she can, however she can. And
absolutely.
having a gazillion surgeries over 2 weeks is a really shitty time. And so she really needs our help. And I very much appreciate everybody who's, even if it's just spreading the word, it does help. So thank you.
Life after death, then, since we've not been beyond the grave, we don't come back with empirical support for it today. We haven't interviewed anybody who's gone beyond the grave, although there are occultists today who would say that they had, mediums and so on, who believe that they are speaking on behalf of people from beyond the grave. I've never done any such thing. And there is an endless dispute, therefore, about the validity or invalidity of near-death experiences and disputes about what people see, what they haven't seen, and so forth, that to my mind are basically a waste of time. The question we really need to ask is, what view of life, which worldview, the atheist...
Let's okay. Look at this evidence, but also we're just going to ignore the evidence.
He knows that the
Why
NDE
did you bring
evidence,
it up then, Joe?
Well, he knows the evidence is weak. He knows the evidence is really weak for NDEs. Number one, they haven't actually died, and contrary to what some people have told me, nobody has gone through brain death and come back from it. So there's sort of two stages. There's clinical death, where your organs stop functioning, your heart, your lungs stop functioning, and your brain is still active for a certain amount of time. And people have been resuscitated from that. And that's where we're getting the NDE, the near-death experience part. Then there is brain death, where your brain shuts down and it does not come back. Once those cells have stopped, once that brain has stopped, that's it. And now that can be slowed due, temperature and things can slow down that process. But in shutting down, nobody has ever come back from that, unless the Christians are right that Jesus rose from the dead 3 days later. But, clinical death happens a fair bit. I know multiple people that have suffered clinical death. They've been resuscitated. We've actually become pretty good at it.
Yeah, we have fairly good odds. I believe recently Dr. Mike said that we have a 40% success rate just with like chest compressions. That's why chest compressions are so important, because if nothing else is available, you still have a 40% chance, which is not nothing.
Yeah, and that's without the paddles, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. It's a machine.
Yeah, the zappy gizmo. It does have a name. Defibrillator.
Defibrillator. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Defibrillator. Yeah.
My brain works sometimes, but selectively.
Yeah, and I mean, like our techniques have gotten really good. But we understand that it is not actually death that you're going through. It is a process of your organs stopping. The process happens where your body shuts down, then your brain shuts down, because the body goes first because it does everything it can to keep the brain alive. And so all of that evidence comes from people that haven't actually died.
Yeah, as far as we can tell. As I've mentioned before, I've had an NDE of my own, and it's like nothing I've ever heard anyone describe, and that tells me it's probably a product of the brain.
Probably, yeah. But I mean,
maybe someday someone will come along and tell me a story very much like what I experienced, and I'm like, holy shit, maybe there is something objective to this, but so far, no dice.
Well, and as I said, like, studies seem to suggest it is culturally based, at least. So you kind of see what you've been raised with, but that's by no means been confirmed. It is possible that there's life after death, and somehow we're seeing a reflection of this afterlife. We don't know for sure. But having said that, there's no reason to believe it is not just the brain shutting down and showing you images. Because we know this can happen all the time. Your brain shows you random images. We dream all the time and are shown random ass images that feel at the time very real. So, the fact that we see images in our head does not actually mean that they are real, unfortunately, because I have some wild ass dreams.
Oh, same. I've been... Not important, but yes.
One which denies the soul and life after death, or the theistic one, actually makes sense or intelligible our human experience. We need to justify our views then about life after death on the basis of the foundational beliefs that undergird them. Now, my acceptance of life after the cessation of my physical vital functions is based on my belief in the existence of God. And I believe, I have a conviction that reality is more than matter in motion. I have a conviction that this is a moral universe. So I believe in God, first of all. That's my first reason for believing in life after death. My second reason is that I believe we're more than matter in motion. My third reason is I think this is a moral universe, and that...
Okay, that's a belief, the matter in motion thing, but it's also a fact. You could be more than that, but like, I don't get how that gets us to an afterlife, but maybe he'll connect it. But also, I just want to note that belief in a God doesn't entail an afterlife either, because the Old Testament has it such that when you're dead, you're just dead, right? Like that's where the angry, jealous God of the Old Testament can no longer hurt you. Once you're dead, you're beyond his reach, because that's all there is. It's only later when we start getting the fan fiction that we start to get afterlives. So belief in a God does not entail an afterlife necessarily.
For this to be a moral universe, objectively, there needs to be an ultimate judge of the universe, requiring life after death.
Objectively, yeah. So this is sort of saying, hey, it's not just that humans have morality, that the universe has morality, that it's objectively a morality that underlies it. And this is sort of using the it's kind of almost a tag, the transcendent argument for God, because there's these transcendent things like intelligibility, morality. They have to have come from God, therefore God, right? Like, so, you know, I wouldn't categorize transcendent things. I think are more where a concept or a abstraction meshes up with reality. So we have a concept of morality, and because we implement that into reality, we sort of make it so that is what a transcendent thing is, as well as any abstraction that sort of describes or we model reality on. But I think he's sort of really begging the question here that the universe is inherently moral. I believe that Dan Barker would agree with that. I think he is a utilitarian first and foremost, which is sort of a more subjective way to look at things. I think that, I really think that he's just begging the question here, just saying, well, I believe it. Why should we? Like, okay, you believe this thing. That's not evidence for anything.
Yeah. I believe that children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. But also in Nil, the Great Not God and Creator of Creator Gods. So what? Now show me the thing.
I think, did the Old Testament have Sheol? Like the sort of place of that souls went, the pit kind of thing. I think it did. I think it did. I think there were a couple of sort of prophets that sort of referenced the pit of death, sort of, which is Sheol. It kind of is, you know, it's certainly not a heaven and hell, but I think there was a vague concept of an afterlife, even if that afterlife was just sort of a limbo area.
So apparently it has different meanings in different places. Sometimes it's a reference to what the Greeks called Hades, which in that case would be sort of like an other world, but nothing super specific about your fate. But it's also, the word literally translates to the grave. So you or the pit, which as in a pit in the ground.
Yes.
But people can take that to mean other things or assume it's a metaphor. Who the fuck knows?
Well,
But
I
it does
mean,
crop up in the book of Job, where Job refers
yes.
to it as apparently as a grave, but people want it to mean other things because he describes it as a place of darkness and his home after death, which is a grave. The book of Psalms, but uses it metaphorically to describe rescue from the grave and possibly hinting at a realm where the dead go. So maybe that's where we get that concept.
Yeah. Well, I think that sort of the you know the sort of the grave, the pit, the Sheol, the place where you go after you die was sort of even in the Old Testament, even if they did think of it as an afterlife, and I'm not 100% sure on that, it was just everybody went there. It wasn't this reward system. That came from a very Hellenistic idea from the Greeks, that you had the Elysium fields and you had Tartarus, but it's all part of the afterlife. Like, you were rewarded if you were a great hero, if you were a great sinner, or you did horrible deeds, you were punished. It didn't have the idea of heaven before that. There was no reward for those that followed God. The reward was in this life. God would, give your family land and make them propagate kind of thing. Like, it really was you're going to be rewarded in this life.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure regardless of what the official dogma was in whatever tradition, there were still people who just made it mean whatever they wanted it to mean, as people always do. Anarchic says, I'm combining those responses to say that radioactive mutant shellfish are the arbiters of universal morality. And that sounds like a solid plan.
I believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead. And actually, I believe more than this. I believe that unless these things are true, our human experience is absurd and our debate tonight is meaningless. That is to say, I want to make the right...
This is why I'm always saying it's the theists who are nihilist. They're saying, I believe in nothing unless the made-up thing that I have no reason to believe in is true.
Right.
If not for that, the entailment is total nihilism. And we're the ones who aren't, believing in divine magical things that are like, but life has meaning, though.
Right. And I do not believe any of them when they say, without God, I would be completely immoral. There'd be no point to anything. It's like, really, you just wouldn't care about your family if there was no God. You just would go, yeah, screw these people. I don't know why I married this person or had these children in the first place. Like, seriously, my guy, I don't believe that for a second. I think that without a God, you would still care about your friends and family. Like, it's really wild the way that religion convinces ordinarily good people that the reason why they treat people well is this imaginary friend, and not because that they understand, they care about these people, and they understand that if they want people to care about them or respect them, they've got to respect other people. Just basic reciprocity. Like, that the God goes and suddenly they're just a complete arsehole to everybody around them. And we know that that isn't true because tons of people have deconverted and they're still good people.
Some become better people.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
I don't know. I love to see it anyway. The whole deconstruction process, when people first they leave the faith and then they're lost and confused for a little while, and then you start seeing light bulbs go off and they're like, hey, I don't have to hate minorities now.
Yeah.
Wild.
Wow.
The bold claim that this debate, to be meaningful, presupposes the truth of my worldview. And that Dan tonight will actually be borrowing from my belief system to make sense of his own, to argue...
Yeah, precept, ha ha ha. Obviously, he is borrowing from my worldview, which presupposes nil, the great not God of creator gods, which is the only way he can have a God to presuppose his worldview on. And in turn, you can presuppose that that only makes sense because yo mama exists, because you wouldn't be here to be thinking about those things if not for yo mama. And therefore, yo mama is the fundamental root of all reality. Pre-sup is fun.
What, your mama's so fat she's the fundamental root of all reality? Like, did you throw a your mama joke in there?
Yo mama is the monad.
Inquiring minds want to know. Oh, look, this is absolutely ridiculous. There was morals before there was Christians. There was morals before there were Jews or Israelites. There were morals in ancient Greek times. There's been morals that have arrived independently. Like, you may say there is some sort of objective morality to the universe, but to sort of say that is from the Christian God is just kind of ridiculous. How did all of these different civilizations come up with morals if they come from the Christian God and they've never heard of the Christian God before? That makes no sense whatsoever. So, yes, rabid atheist, we are in pre-sup now. Yes. You're stealing my worldview. I don't see how. You don't have a monopoly on metaphysics, sir, even though you'd like to believe that you do.
Oh, well, it's just more projection, because they know every single precept knows every part of their worldview is taken from a different group that preceded them. Whether it's secular people or different religions, it's all cobbled together from pre-existing material. So they're reaching their hand into the worldview sack of history and accusing everyone else of reaching into their pocket.
Well, everybody is. Everybody is basing their worldview on things that have come before, information that we have learnt. You might hate me, but Christianity did have a huge influence on the Western world. Like, absolutely. There's no denying that, but that doesn't mean that everything that they came up with is true or useful.
Yeah, quite a lot of it was not great.
Not great.
Like,
not great.
hating minorities, for example. The supreme being who runs the entire universe wants you to hate brown people. Now pay me the tithe so I can make sure he gets it. Because
how dare you suggest?
But he needs money.
How dare you suggest a heliocentric model? You take that back right now, because our divine creator made our planet the center of the universe. Sure he did. Sure he did.
God is never wrong. How dare you question? But also, I fucking love that clip. Precepts make me extra giggly because they're just so absurd.
They're kind of obnoxious as well. That's the thing. They're really obnoxious about it. And it's just sort of like, this whole idea that you believe in a God, yet you're just denying it in your unrighteousness, is just ridiculous. Like, it is laughable. And this is what I've said to I've said, do you realize that sort of to anybody that isn't a precept, you are destroying your own credibility, because I know what I believe in and what I don't. And when you say you believe in something and I don't, I'm like, well, they're wrong about that. What else are they wrong about? It's a pretty terrible way to go about convincing people. But precepts aren't trying to convince non-precepts. They're trying to appeal to their own tribe. They're trying to sort of make their own presuppy people feel justified in the way that they treat people.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's the main goal, is they want to make it's still a circular argument, but they want to make it as big and complicated sounding a circle as possible, so that it's intimidating to people. It doesn't have to be intimidating. As I've said before, it's just a game of Mad Libs. They're throwing out a whole bunch of terms, but at the very bottom of their script, there's just a blank spot that they've decided to write their God into, but you can replace it with anything else. And
it's not a circle, Ember. It's a spiral.
It's a virtuous spiral.
Yeah. Well, that's from when I got in. I argued with Saiten Bruggencate, and I'm like, that's just a circular argument. He's like, it's not a circle, it's a spiral, and I'm like, what?
And you should join our MLM. It's not a
Yeah.
pyramid.
It's
It's a cone.
Our model is a trapezoid.
Yes.
Nice Simpsons reference thrown in there.
For the truth of his own. How am I going to do that? Well, let me begin. There is life after death because God exists. Now, theists believe, I think we'd agree, it's
obviously that's a non sequitur, but
yeah,
I thought I should point it out.
Yes, that does not, by that M means it does not necessarily follow. A God could exist and it could be reincarnation. A God could exist and he could just obliterate everybody afterwards. That does not follow. He's basically saying, and what he should be saying, his argument, it's a shitty argument, but his argument is life after death exists because the Christian God exists, or the God I believe in exists.
That said, I'd be willing to let him get away with it, provided he can, in fact, demonstrate his God exists, because that's really the question I've been wondering about for my entire life. If he can just show me his God, then I'll permit him his non sequitur.
Atheists who tend to believe in life after death, atheists don't. If Christian theism is true,
no, that's not entailed either. I know lots of atheists who believe in ghosties and other assorted non-religious afterlives. Atheists, once again, just means you don't have a God.
Yes. Yeah, you can believe in life after death without having any belief in a God. I will say generally, atheists don't believe in life after death on a general case, but I think that is more because they are skeptics rather than atheists. A lot of the things that atheists get accused of automatically being, like if you believe in evolution, or if you're an atheist, you believe in evolution. It's more because atheists are skeptics. And so they will attribute their belief to what has the evidence, and evolution has the evidence to back it up. So it's sort of a generality, but it definitely is a general case that, yeah, atheists will not believe in an afterlife and they will believe in evolution because they are generally skeptics. However, that is not necessarily the case.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of atheists who are very science-minded, who have a general vibe of like a circle of life kind of thing. Like, maybe not a supernatural afterlife, but the matter that makes me up will return to the environment and will be recycled in trees and foxes and weasels and whatever the fuck else, you know? So after a fashion, we live on. And also, if we have children, after a fashion, we live on. And also the lives we touch, the things we've changed, the stuff we build, the art we make, after a fashion, we live on. So you can have a non-spiritual sense of afterlife, kind of.
Yeah, but that isn't, afterlife sort of suggests that your current mental framework will persist after the death of the brain, and I don't think that is true. Sort of the matrix that makes me will be gone. And I get, like, parts of me will live on. I think it's really cool that people are buried under trees so they can nourish the soil and things. I think that's beautiful. That's a really gorgeous thing, that they are sort of going back to the sort of bioorganic, mesh that we have on this planet. It's really beautiful to me. But, I wouldn't count that as afterlife, only metaphorically. And I totally understand, like, metaphorically, you live on in your work, in your memes, in, the ideas that you pass on and stuff. But, I think that when we talk afterlife, that's not what we're talking about. And just sort of muddying the waters like that, I don't think it's useful, Ember. I'm sorry, I just don't think it's useful.
Yeah, it's not the same thing they're talking about. I'll grant that.
Right.
Another thing I'll grant is that Left-Handed Jedi, who sends a super chat for $2, thank you so much, Jedi, says we are star stuff. That was a quote from Carl Sagan, if I recall correctly, and that does appear to be true. We're the reincarnated or incarnated in the first place material of dead stars. We are the afterlife of stars, kind of.
Yeah, and every like sort of atom in your body was forged in the heart of a dying star, and you have enough energy within you to, you know, destroy half of the planet, kind of thing. Those things are absolutely true. You know, what consequence that has? Join my cult here.
We could have like a cult of radioactive something. Radioactive shellfish, I guess, because like
of course
just the carbon-14 in our bodies, if we could figure out how to get it all to decay at the same time, then we'd have a lot of nitrogen, but also some radiation.
A lot of energy locked up within everything, really.
It's true. That's what our metabolism runs on, though that's chemical rather than atomic, but it's still energy.
Yeah.
The spicy shrimp. Ooh, what about the spicy space shrimp? In a way, we're all kind of space shrimp. Because like
that's why when people sort of say, or the guy said, you know, we're all just matter, it's like, well, no, matter is sort of more solid. Like we're also energy, my guy.
Yeah. I've always found that kind of insulting. Like, you're just matter. No, there's emergent properties about all of us. Like, we have, I have feelings. Oh, man.
Even though I grant that there has been a universal belief in some kind of life after death amongst pagans and so on, in Greek philosophy and Roman philosophy and Hindu thought and Buddhist thought and so on,
it's almost like, because here's a weird thing about religions. Nobody has ever spontaneously discovered Christianity. It's only by people spreading the magic book that it gets around. But every culture has come up with some concept of life after death, almost like everyone everywhere has wishful thinking. Wouldn't it be great if we could like just go to an eternal paradise where our struggles are over?
Yeah, I don't think genuinely or generally throughout any culture, people have not wanted to die. I think that's sort of a ubiquitous thing throughout humanity.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Probably fair at the very least.
And I think that what else is ubiquitous about humans throughout history and about all humans is that we have a tendency to believe the things we want to be true.
Yeah.
So put those two together and you'll have a tendency to want to not die and a tendency to believe the things that we want, which is to not die. That alone would explain the consistent beliefs in an afterlife throughout history. Just saying.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be everybody, just a few people in every culture.
Belief in the Judeo-Christian concept of God that's also been become part of the Islamic conception of God to a certain degree, that has a God stationed outside of the universe, independent from it, who holds all people accountable to God.
Reminder that none of those are actually part of the Judeo-Christian tradition. The whole outside the universe thing has been tacked on in the century since. The holy books and church tradition all hold that God does exist within inside the universe, and also this hold people accountable thing. That there's a lot of fan fiction tacked on. None of it is entailed.
And so really what we have is a choice between an impersonal view of reality and a personal explanation for reality. The one is going to give us God and life after death, the other isn't. The universe is either then personal, purposeful, or it is an emanation from the void. And we are a statistical...
Bets on whether he goes for an argument from consequences. We have to decide which we prefer were true.
Right. I don't want this to be, this can't be true because I don't like the consequences of it. I don't like the entailments of it. It's a very bad way to reason. No, totally. You're absolutely right. But also emanation from the void. I mean, seriously?
If you experience emanations from the void, consult
Right.
Dr. Ben.
Yeah, no, I ate too many beans last night and I have an emanation from the void. My
Oh,
wife
no.
was displeased. Like, seriously, what are you talking about, my guy? Emanation from the void. Dang.
Anomaly in the chaos, as Bertrand Russell so poignantly put it. Now, I think that we can recognize first God's existence by the fact that without him, our human experience is reduced to an absurdity. There is, in a sense, an impossibility of the contrary view. If the universe isn't created by God...
Oh, there you go.
Then
there you go. Impossibility of the contrary. Precept. This is Precept 101, right? So
it literally is. That's from Alan Plantinga's book about how to do the precept.
Right. So Plantinga, the problem that I have with him is that he's in a circular argument without actually acknowledging it or realizing it. So what he's essentially basing the impossibility of any contrary being true, right? Because when you're talking about possibilities and other possible worlds, you're sort of saying, is there a logical way that the God couldn't have existed and the world could be true? Now, most people and most Christians would say, yes, that's possible, but it's just not the case. So why are the precepts saying that's impossible? Well, it's impossible because they presuppose that it is the case that a God is there, right? So they're saying it's impossible because the God makes it impossible. And you're sort of saying, but if the God doesn't exist, so the contrary is impossible because the God exists, and the God exists because the contrary is impossible. Do we see the circularity here? Right?
It's like barely an oval.
It really is viciously circular. Like one depends on directly upon the other. The God exists directly because it is impossible for it to be otherwise, and the impossible for it to be otherwise directly hinges upon that God existing.
Because my mommy said so, that's why.
Right.
See, it is yo mama at the foundation of the universe. I told you.
There is no design plan in terms of a total meaning from the first atom to the end of the world. There's no pre-established order. There's no pre-established relationship.
It's barely related to his discussion, but the fact he says the first atom, there is no first atom. All the atoms condensed out of the hot dense plasma at roughly the same time, by which I mean something like 10,000 years, but there is no first atom. You know, it's the fact he thinks that that's how it works, that everything is one by one and therefore there must be a first. It's minor, but it demonstrates one of the flaws in his thinking, that he perceives the universe as a domino line of chain reactions rather than a whole bunch of things all happening at once, which is what actually is the case.
And you'd have to argue that you believe that God created all of this stuff and instead of what we know, which is that, you know, it was only hydrogen at first, and then, you know, you had to have supernova to create the heavy elements, and, you know, all of these chain reactions, none of which seem to include a God doing anything, but do seem to include a whole lot of natural phenomenon happening.
It's pretty neat. I've had so many people argue with me over cosmology and cosmogony, and they'll be like, okay. I'm with you. Big Bang, inflation, reionization, and the universe becomes transparent. That's how we get the CMBR, and we can observe that. Cool. I'm with you so far. But life on Earth, surely that proves a God put his finger into the universe. Well, like it's I'm like, you're doing the God of the gaps. You're going You went from the creation of the universe all the way down to one tiny planet around one main sequence star on an outer arm of one galaxy.
The unfashionable outer arm of the Milky Way. I think that was in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I know real estate values out here are terrible and inflation.
I know, right? Absolutely horrible.
Between the facts of our experience, we are just confronted with brute, meaningless factuality. I have 3 children, and when they were learning to draw, they would do join the dot puzzles, connect the dot puzzles. And usually the dots would have a number next to them, and kids learn to draw by recognizing a shape. As they connect the dots, a shape emerges. Now, the theistic view of reality is that there is an author to the puzzle, if you will, and that as we encounter the facts of our experience, the dots on the page, as we connect them, we discover God's meaning. There is a meaning there because it's been created by God. The atheistic worldview posits a sea of dots, but there is...
I'm sorry. You think that the facts that we discover about the reality around us, no matter how absurd or meaningless they seem to be, they have meaning in a greater sense because your children play connect the dots.
Mm-hmm. It's a variant of the watchmaker. It's we can see watches are designed and not natural, and therefore what's natural must also be not natural. You see.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right, it is, yeah.
There is no pre-established relationship between those dots, between the facts of our experience. It is undesigned, unpremeditated, unplanned, a chaos of particulars. And when you come to the universe today, your problem you see tonight is not simply just to ask, do I have a soul and am I going to live on after death? Your first question is there any meaning? Can I identify any meaning or truth in the universe at all?
Yes.
I no doubt that Dan tonight will have done his homework and he'll be talking about rationality, facts, reason, evidence, and so on and so forth. But what do those things...
But I reject all of those things. Yeah. Why would anybody bring up facts, reason, rationality? Yes. We're not here to debate that. We're here to debate life after death. Just trust me, bro.
But my vibes, my spicy vibe, my spicy shrimp.
Presuppose about the world. They presuppose, as Paul Davies, a scientist and researcher, pointed out, he says science has its own faith and belief system. All science proceeds on the assumption that nature is ordered in a rational and intelligible way.
Hold on. Faith and belief system? I don't think so, my guy. Science has its own methodology, and it does have axioms, yes. They are. So what's the difference between a presupposition and an axiom? Right? Axioms are generally agreed upon for the purpose of creating a starting point. Right? Like, so people may agree on, say, for instance, math, for instance, is axiomatic. It's sort of, these values have this amount. This is how the operands and the operators work. You know, we have these, it will be in base 10 kind of thing. So decimals, instead of base 2 or base 12, like it'll have, you know, the normal system. That is axiomatic, right? There's no reason it has to be that way. That's an axiom. And science has various axioms that we kind of just agree on. Now, they can be shown because they are effective, right? But we don't have to do that. So we start out with these axioms of science. Like, for instance, peer review is part of science. It starts with observation. It goes to, question, testing, et cetera, et cetera. The whole methodology is kind of an axiom for science, right? We kind of just agree on it. It doesn't mean it has to be that way, but that's the way we set it up. Now, the fact is that when you do it like that, we get results. We get tangible, implementable results that tell us so much about the world around us that we can, put that into practice. We can defy gravity by flying. We can create a computer system that allows one person, better than Ember, on one side of the world to communicate almost instantaneously with Mark Reed on the other side of the planet.
Sorcery.
Right? Like we have these, well, it's just science, like it is just the implementation of testable science. That's what we do. Now, the results that it gets are far better than religion has ever produced. I will take that matchup any day of the week. Now, the precept will say, well, science only exists because of God. Bullshit. Like absolute hogwash. It doesn't. People doing science back in the ancient Greek days, and some of those people were complete atheists. They didn't believe in the gods, famously so. But the whole point is that it isn't like just a faith in it, right? If science stopped producing the results it produces, we wouldn't have faith in it, right? We wouldn't just continue to believe it works when it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's tu quoque, as we predicted, an hour and change ago. He's saying, "Oh, well, you just believe things too." No, as Mark was laying out, axioms are a starting point, but if we have to, we can go back and demonstrate them.
Yeah.
And if they fail, if they fall apart, if we find a better explanation for something, then we can update them, as opposed to presupposition, which is not only just hanging on nothing, it's impossible to change because there's no substance to it.
Right. And there's no way to investigate it because it's assumed to be true, that you presuppose it to be true. There's no way to actually investigate it because all of your work assumes that it's true. Science isn't like that. We assume it to work. I mean, science isn't even a truth apt thing. Like, it isn't that science is true. What does that even mean? Right? Science is a methodology. It is a way of finding things out. It isn't true or false. It is just effective. When it ceases to become effective, we would stop using it. If we found something to be more effective in finding out the truth, then we would use that instead.
We would science the science, because that's what science is at some level, is parsimony. It's the most effective thing. We've gotten things wrong before. We've gotten things very wrong before. I've got a bit in one of those many scripts I was writing this morning about how sometimes psychology has been used to enforce political ideas, and we get interesting things like drapetomania, the mental illness of slaves who try to run away from slavery.
Right.
Sometimes science can be wrong, but the point of science is we get less wrong over time.
Well, getting things wrong is kind of built into science. Like, it is set up with the expectations that things will be wrong and a way to correct that over time. It is self-correcting. That's the whole point. Because it is set up that you're trying to falsify these hypotheses. You're trying to falsify these theories. That is how it's set up. And it's done like that for a very good reason. It's because if you can overturn something, you're doing science. It's set up to overturn things.
Yeah, we need that falsifiability, or it's just sparkling thoughts and prayers.
Well, even if it wasn't falsifiability, it still wouldn't be just faith. Like, we don't have to take it on faith that we can create airplanes. We don't have to take it on faith that the combustion engine works. We have practical demonstrations of these things. It's not faith that allows us to do it. It's kind of ridiculous.
I'm trying to find my thoughts and prayers. I did find my tape here.
Nice.
My brain is so
kind of emoji.
I know. I probably could put that one back in now, since we have placeholders.
It's up to you. It's up to you.
Yeah, it's fine. That joke ran its course many years ago. It's only the really, really old timers who even remember that thing.
Rip tape, yeah.
You couldn't be a scientist if you thought the universe was a meaningless jumble of odds and ends haphazardly juxtaposed. They expect to encounter additional elegant mathematical order, but where do these laws come from and why do they have the form they do? Now, what kind of evidence is relevant to tonight's debate? Should I be coming to you with a series of testimonies about people who have suffered brain death and come back? Well, if I want to examine whether a piece of music
Nobody suffered brain death and come back, you moron. Nobody. What testimonies are you going to get from people that have had complete brain death and been resuscitated when nobody with complete brain death has been resuscitated, my guy? I think he means clinical death.
Probably. Or, well, he could just be being dishonest or just straight up wrong.
Maybe.
It's hard to say. But like, if there is afterlife things, so okay. Let me rephrase. When I was very small, as I mentioned, I talked to my grandmother about what happens after we die when I was like 4 years old. And she promised me, she made a deal with me rather. She said, whichever one of us gets to heaven first can send a ghost back to tell the other that heaven is real. Obviously, she died first.
Did
I do have my so a weird thing happened shortly after her funeral. There's sort of a big deal here every fall when the monarch butterflies migrate, because they all kind of gather together at Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn, New York. And if you can catch them on that one day a year when they're there, it's amazing. There's thousands and thousands of monarch butterflies. But after that day, they all start on their journey back to Mexico. And there are no more monarchs in the area for the rest of the year.
Yeah, butterfly migration.
Yeah.
Sure.
So a week after that, I took my kids to the drive-in, and in the middle of the night, a monarch butterfly flies over and lands right on my knee. And I got this vibe that was a message from my grandmother. It's probably my brain just doing tricks, but it was weird. And so I have never been able to entirely shake it, but no ghosts. But if heaven were a thing, a ghost, angel, whatever, like, why has no one reported back yet? Why has no one appeared after the fact to verify it to us? Left-handed Jedi sends us $2. Thank you, Jedi. And says, hoo-hoo, they're only mostly unalive.
I think that's a Princess Bride reference.
Definitely.
But I think that's a Princess Bride reference, which is a good reference. I'm on board with this.
Yeah, we always.
Yeah, but
the Pirate Roberts.
When you look at things like, the scientists think that there's order in the universe. Yeah, there's a regularity of nature. I got uniformity of nature. I got you. But there's also a hell of a lot of chaotic stuff happening that we can't understand, like a real chaotic mix. So I'm not sure how sort of saying, I want there to be these hard and fast laws of the universe. That has to come from a lawgiver. No, you're conflating, right? The laws that we talk about, the laws of nature, they're not like human laws where you need someone to write them down or whatever, right? Laws, as far as the laws that we write, are prescriptions. They're basically, if this happens, then this. Like, if you rob a bank, then you get 10 to 15 years in jail. That's what our laws are. The laws of the universe are constraints that you can't just break them, right? They are constraints against doing anything. Like, so when the law of gravity says that I can't just, by flapping my arms, go and fly into the air. It's not like I can just do that and then there's some kind of penalty afterwards. They are like physical constraints or literal constraints on us. So he's just conflating what laws are. It's a stupid argument going, well, laws need a lawgiver. They are two totally separate things. Yeah. Yeah, false equivocation. Yeah.
Yeah. Top shelf apologetics. And this is his opening. Oh my goodness, this debate is good.
Dan Barker is going to rip the crap out of this guy. I almost feel sorry for him, because I know Dan Barker is one of the best debaters I've seen, and he is like, this is a field day for someone like him.
I know. The rebuttals are going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I actually don't look at a CD under the microscope. If I'm asking what is the nature of numbers, I don't collect all the fridge magnets I can find to study their physical properties. If I want to know if Dan's arguments are rational tonight, I don't crack his head open to inspect the tissue of his brain. And if I want to know if there is a soul, I don't dissect the cerebral cortex. So my argument centers around whether a worldview without God and the concept of the soul is intelligible to us at all. As interesting as these discussions about hallucinations and brain death may be, they are secondary as to whether Dan tonight, representing the atheist worldview, has an intelligible set of concepts with which to even address the question.
I hate to break it to him, but does he know that a lot of our understanding of the brain has come from cracking people's heads open? Like after they're dead? And, you know, doing MRIs and things like that, and, you know, like reading the electrical impulses of the brain. Like, you don't necessarily have to crack somebody's head open to read the electrical impulses of the brain, my guy. And, you know, in the early times, we did do, like, you know, open up people's skulls when they're cadavers and look at their brain. How does he think that neurosurgery is done?
Prayers, probably.
Maybe. That's the wildest thing. A lot of the time, people getting neurosurgery, because there's no nerves in the brain, they're usually like wide awake with no anesthetic, which is wild to me. Like, it's just absolutely wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would, I'd freak the fuck out. I understand why it's necessary, but it would freak me the fuck out. But I do notice how he's like, not only he's shifting the burden and moving the goalpost at the same time. He's trying to say, not only is it on Dan to show that his worldview is rational, never mind that he's presented nothing of his own that's rational. He's only just claimed rationality and given us no basis to believe that. But also, the point of the debate isn't the point of the debate. The point of the debate is, can you even have rationality without a God? And if not, then I win. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What has to be true about reality to allow our experience to be what it appears to be? Are we more than the sum of our parts?
If Joe doesn't understand how it works, then no one does. The incredulity. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, we're always more than the sum. Like, you know, there are emergent properties that humans have, but that doesn't necessitate a God. And appealing to sort of, so this is what's called an appeal to emotion, right? You're basically saying, oh, are we nothing but atoms, or do you know, are we special beings that have a special place? Are we this special organism? Okay, it may feel good to think that, you know, humanity number one, of course, but how does that show a God?
Right. Or any particular God, even. That's my whole thing. I've been saying for a while now, I'm ready to believe the first God that comes along and can be actually demonstrated. The problem is, which one?
Oh, whichever one's first.
Mm-hmm.
Do you hear that? Gods, get in there, get in early, and have Better Than Ember as a follower. You too can have Better Than Ember as a follower. Yeah,
for real. Like I mean, I realize that like my channel is like 1,000th the size of even a medium-sized one, but still, like, I have been very vocal as an atheist for 3.5 years at this point. And if I suddenly was like, guys, I believe in Zarathustra or Uhura Mazda, because Zarathustra was the prophet, I think. It's not important. If I believe in this thing, and here's why, it would be pretty convincing that at the very least I was convinced. And I believe that I wouldn't be convinced unless I had something that was demonstrable that I could show you.
Yeah.
Maybe the other gods are all keeping the real God from demonstrating itself so that we don't end up with that kind of situation.
Ooh.
Maybe.
Is there a ghost in the machine? Are we more than our constituent physical parts? Now, I think that God is a necessary precondition to the intelligibility of my understanding myself as a human being. Some of you...
There's a problem with that. Not only is it silly, it's also demonstrably false, because you can't have an understanding of any particular religion until you're indoctrinated into it. And yet, even though he may not have been like fully adult level, cognizant, conscious, sapient, etc., he definitely understood himself before that point to some degree. So no, knowledge of a God is not necessary to understanding yourself.
Well, he's making the presupposition that intelligibility, i.e. the ability to understand anything, is based upon a God. What evidence does he have for this?
But what he said was, you have to have knowledge of a God to even have knowledge of yourself. And that's not the same as there being a God.
Absolutely not true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be familiar with the Scottish empiricist, the religious skeptic, David Hume. He asked this question about what we can really know.
Ed makes an interesting point. I would submit Fangs to you, because Fangs has actually appeared in live chat, but Fangs doesn't want you to believe in him. So Fangs is, of course, Ed's channel's resident deity who does not want you to believe. But you remind me that once upon a time, God actually did show up in this live chat and even sent us a super chat. Everybody else is giving money to God. God gave money to me, and that's pretty convincing. I had forgotten. Mm-hmm. Where's blessed be he? You have forgotten.
Don't traumatize me like that. I blocked them ages ago.
Know about ourselves, about God, about morality, about life and death, and so on. And he said, in the end, we only have perceptions. We have no idea about the reality behind them once God is out of the picture. There's no evidence, he said, for God. He said there's no evidence for a material world. He said we have real and certain knowledge, he thought, of the external world. All metaphysical beliefs about the world, he said, are impossible. He said the law of uniformity of nature. He says, when we talk about laws of nature, he says these are not observations, laws of thought, laws of science, and so on. He says these are beliefs. But he says, on what basis do we warrant these beliefs? How can we have valid ideas about future events that we haven't experienced if all of our knowledge is based on empirical experience?
So he's going over the problem of induction really badly, right? So Hume's problem of induction basically is as follows. Through induction, you can basically plot the future or plot why things will happen in a uniform way by what has happened before. So, for instance, it gets to autumn, the leaves fall off trees. Through induction of that happening time and time and time again, you can basically say, well, through induction, I know that when it comes autumn, the leaves will fall off trees. The problem with this is that your kind of induction relies on induction, right? The idea that repeated acts in the past that demonstrate something will continue to happen into the future is also induction. It's saying, hey, induction has been consistent throughout history, which is induction. And that's something Hume pointed out. Mm-hmm. However, Karl Popper had a really good answer to this, which was fallibility. It was like, if it keeps so there is no end point to making sure induction works, but we continue to believe in it, not for no abstract reason, but just because it continues to work. As soon as it stops working, we then dismiss our belief in it. And that's fallibility. It is an answer to Hume's problem of induction. So basically it's saying induction, you believe that it works until it ceases to do so. And which certainly has not happened at all. Uniformity of nature appears to be a thing, but what we sort of say is, even though I'm 99.9999999% sure that uniformity of nature will continue to happen in nature, there is always that 1% of, well, if it ever doesn't work, then it's dropped.
Yeah, it's there weirdly, it's almost like the modern philosophers have recapitulated some stuff from the ancients, because there's some classical writings where they talk about if P then Q. Well, how do you know if P then Q? Like you can test it, P and then Q. That's literally what a very basic experiment is you're showing there's a causal relationship. If P, then Q. But of course, this comes from the logic and mathematics side of things. But why, right? This is getting into sort of the abstract, the metaphysics, I suppose, even though it's more like metaphysics because it's multiple layers of abstract. But the ultimate answer that Aristotle and his band came up with is, well, once we've demonstrated if P then Q for any given set of values, then we will hold that it's provisionally true until shown otherwise.
Correct, yes.
And that's what that is.
And going back to the black and white fallacy, I feel like he's warming up to that because pre-subs get into this a lot and they sort of say, well, how can you absolutely know because P then Q? And the answer that a number of philosophers and especially Popper came up with is you don't know anything really absolutely, right? Like what we're currently sort of saying in the atheist space is we build up levels of confidence that it's not just either you don't know something at all or you have absolute confidence in it, right? Like this is how precepts set it up. You either have no clue or absolute confidence. And that's not how we live our lives. It's not how we investigate the world around us. What we do is through induction, we build up a higher level of confidence, right? And that confidence may get so sky high that it's basically an axiom. It's a generally agreed upon fact that everybody, the sky is blue kind of thing, like it is axiomatic at that point. But, and here's the thing, we never say 100%. Things can always be disproved. And that's the whole point. But these guys want to jump in and say, no, you have to have absolute certainty. And that's where they try and insert their God. God gives you the absolute certainty when in no way it does, right? All you're basically doing is saying, hey, my imaginary friend means that I can have confidence that you don't.
Never mind all the times that God has been wrong, like, flat earth, the sun orbits us.
Yep.
You will never die. All of those things. Details, though. Of course, it wasn't God who said those. It was people who wrote that. And then other people later said that was inspired by a God. But never mind details.
And it's really funny.
The main thing is that everything we assert, whether it be from a skeptical perspective, a worldview, if you will, or a rational perspective, just reason there's always an asterisk at the end. The unspoken bit, we can be wrong. And I think that's what drives precepts crazy. Not even necessarily just precepts, but people who are driven to religion for that feeling of certainty it terrifies them that we could be wrong. So they want to pretend they can't be wrong.
Right. And so believing that you can't be wrong doesn't make you right. It just means that you can't be convinced that you're wrong. Like it doesn't automatically make you right. But I was going to say something, and that is, I've sort of lost my train of thought. That's okay. I was thinking something really hard and I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. So when they sort of say, it's really funny, when I speak to Saiten Bruggencate, he says that we have absolute certainty because of God and you don't. And it's like, well, I don't think you can be absolutely certain of anything. And he goes, are you absolutely certain of that? And I'm like, no. What? Yeah, there might be things we can be absolutely certain of. I'm not even absolutely certain of that. But why do we need who lives their life with absolute certainty? Who goes out, to drive a car and you're absolutely certain you'll make it to your destination? Nobody. Everybody understands that you have a reasonable confidence in these things that we do. You have a reasonable confidence that your wife will be there for you. You have a reasonable confidence that, you're not going to have a heart attack on your doorstep. You know, you have a reasonable confidence. Nobody have absolute certainty. So I don't know why these people are sort of pretending this absolute certainty when, you know, it's obviously not a thing.
Yeah. It hurts my head sometimes. I'm so glad we've sorted through it, because like I do have to confess, when I first started on YouTube and I was encountering all the silly arguments, like the cosmological argument and so forth, I was entertained by how easily dismantled those were. And then I came across a transcendental argument and the other flavors of precept. And at first it was a little bit intimidating, because there's this whole unique set of vocabulary that doesn't exist anywhere else. And it sounds really, really complicated. It's intimidating intentionally. There's a term for it. I can't recall what the term is, but it's a kind of overcompensation where you deliberately overcomplicate your idea to compensate for the deficiencies in the idea. You try to hide the flaws in extra terminology. But once you cut through the bullshit, once you realize most of it is bullshit and you unravel it, there's just nothing there but that flat donut.
Yeah. There's only one real fallacy you need to know when encountering a precept, and that's begging the question, asserting something that is true that has not been demonstrated to be true. That's it.
How do you know the sun's going to rise tomorrow? Have you been to tomorrow to see if the sun will rise?
You can't prove the sun will rise, buddy, bestie, Holmes. I don't know if you're aware of how sunrise works, but like relative to the Earth, the sun pretty much holds still and the Earth spins. If the Earth ever stopped spinning, I assure you, you would know it.
Yeah, so look, but there is always like this some possible world, some possible chance that the Earth will get hit by some meteorite and spin off away from the sun, and the sun won't rise tomorrow. Maybe our rotation stops or whatever. Like, there is always that slim possibility somehow. But, you know, just because that is the case doesn't mean we shouldn't trust induction. Right? Like, you would admit there's some possible world where God ends the world and the sun doesn't rise tomorrow. But that's no reason why we shouldn't believe that it should, because that's what induction does. Like, this is sort of well, if you're not absolutely certain the sun will rise tomorrow, you've got no right to make a reasonable conclusion based upon induction. And that's crazy. Because if I say, hey, I'm going to, I can walk down the street without a problem. Just because there's a tiny chance that you might get mugged doesn't mean that you can't claim a knowledge statement of, hey, I can walk down the road without problems as a statement of truth. You know, like, this is a knowledge claim. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
We love the ridiculousness. It's an adventure. Fox says, my train of thought is one of those kids' wooden train sets. I always wanted one of those. I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Rogers, Mark, because it was like an American PBS thing, but I don't know. Maybe it made it around the world, but he had a train that connected his house to Imagination Land, and I thought the train was cool.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've never seen Mr. Rogers. I've never seen it, not aware of it. I do know the name. I know that he did a children's show and was supposedly a really good guy. But I know nothing about it. I'm not aware of any train. Sorry.
Alas.
Hey, for kids stuff, we had Mr. Squiggle.
It wiggled?
Mr. Squiggle.
Oh, Mr. Squiggle. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think I can. How do I used to be able to do a squiggle thing with my hands, but I can't Oh, here we go. It's quick. It's quick. I'm doing it badly, but
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Don't mind me. I just work here.
It rose yesterday, you don't experience yesterday today, and that presupposes the reliability of your memory. Hume also pointed out events are not necessarily connected. He said they are separate. They may be conjoined, but there's no necessity of connection. And along came Immanuel Kant, who was panicked by this conclusion of David Hume, and says, well, okay, fair enough. We can't know what the real world actually is, but at least we can psychologize knowledge. We can say that we know things as they appear to us. We'll just have to build our ideas around this.
Let's break this down. Okay, so knowledge, to know something, right, is justified true belief. Okay, and so the first part of that, justification, right? So if you're sort of saying, hey, the sun has risen every single day for not only my life, but back as far as we can remember into the past, that's the justification, right? So I know it will rise tomorrow. That's the knowledge claim. Now, what about the second prong for that justified true belief is the truth of what you are saying. So if in fact the sun rises tomorrow, you are both A, justified, and B, true. It is a true statement. So you did have knowledge that the sun would rise tomorrow because it's justified and true, right? If the sun doesn't rise tomorrow, then that knowledge claim was false. It, in fact, didn't rise, so therefore it isn't true. So when we're talking about knowledge, he's sort of making this error where he's saying you can't make any knowledge claim unless you have absolute certainty of what is going to happen, and that is not the case, right? Any knowledge claim about the future basically has to be justified. We find out if it's true when it actually happens or not, right? So it wouldn't be knowledge to say, hey, I think this horse is going to win the race because I like the name, right? You wouldn't have knowledge, okay, because it's not really justified, right? It's not really rationally justified with logic that the name is going to help you're going to be able to pick a winner. Now, it might win, right? You might have just gotten lucky and picked the right horse, by accident, but you wouldn't have knowledge, okay? You wouldn't have known that horse would win. You just claimed it was going to win, said you knew it, but you didn't know. You just got lucky, okay? Now, the opposite is if you study horses and you find the best one and you have, this horse as, it's the Phar Lap of its generation, basically. If you don't know who Phar Lap was an amazing horse that won so many races, it's ridiculous, and was probably poisoned as a result, just saying. That if you did all of that research and said, yes, I know that horse is going to win because I have justified it, well, you've got two options there. If the horse wins, then you had knowledge, right? You had the knowledge that it would win, and it was knowledge based upon your justification. If it doesn't, then yeah, it was justified to believe that, but you didn't know it. So he's sort of making it as you've got to have absolute certainty to make any knowledge claim whatsoever. And that is not the case, right? You just need justification, and the induction provides only one part of that prong. Induction provides the justification, but it doesn't provide the truth for things in the future. You know how we discover that? We wait. And if it's true in the future, then it works. But it can provide justification. So we can know things as long as it's justified and it turns out to be true.
Philosophy.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people are like, ugh, philosophy, blah. No, this is why. I realize there's a bunch of people who play fucking word games and want to try to make absurdities real with arguments and other assorted bullshit. That's I guess pseudo philosophy. If there can be pseudoscience, there can be pseudo philosophy too. But like actual legit philosophy, you can actually figure some things out with it. It's pretty handy.
Yeah, and I think that it raises some really good questions, but it's sort of this it's a perversion of it where people just sort of go, well, I'm gonna talk above you, and if you don't understand it, that's your problem. That's not what it should be for. Sometimes you meet people who don't have the vocabulary, but they have the thought, they have the thoughts of what is this and what is that. They have a real philosophical mind, but have never studied it and don't have the vocabulary. And but you understand what they mean by everything. So, Noise was saying, Phil Bros, yeah, I have the same level of contempt. I dislike people using philosophy as a bludgeon to make other people feel invalid kind of thing.
Yeah. They just people will play any kind of trick they can to try to blow hot air. It's
Well, it's apologetics. It's apologetics. It is making excuses for something you've already determined that you believe.
Hell yeah.
Now, honest atheists have actually seen the implications of this and given us the mood of our time, which I would describe as existential. Sartre said we are a bubble on an ocean of nothingness. We can't know anything. Now, we will say, well, hang on a minute, Joe, I know what I know. But the skeptics have often pointed out,
But do you know what you don't know? And do you know what you don't know that you don't know? And how do you know? You know?
begin with yourself, the finite self, you cannot get beyond yourself. You know you've got ideas, you've got impressions, the content of your brain, but how do you know anything more than that? The constant threat of solipsism is there, which simply means the mind alone. How do you know without God?
God does not solve solipsism. It doesn't.
No. If anything, it makes you like even more, because you're like, reality doesn't matter. Only what's in my mind. Even if reality is real, I'm still just one mind alone.
Yeah.
It's just me and God, baby. And God lives in my brain. It's my imaginary
Well, he's
friend.
sort of saying that you can't tell what is real without the God. And what I'm saying is you can apply that to the God. Like, how do you know the God is real? You have to presuppose it. You have to assume that it is correct. But if you're assuming that all of the empirical information that's coming to you from everywhere is not real, like, what are you talking about? And the thing about sensory information and why I'm an empiricist is because you don't need to believe in your senses for them to operate, right? Like, you don't have to believe that what you're, the pain you're feeling is real or not. You will just feel it. It's kind of one of those things that may fall into the category of a properly basic belief, because you don't have to have any opinion on the feeling of touching that flame. You will just feel it. You can disbelieve it all you want. It's not going to go away.
Yeah. You can be like, the flame's not real, but you still burn, or at least you feel the burn, which
you
is
feel the burn, yeah.
Feel the burn. 3 more.
That there is a reality in an external world, and there are even other people, other minds. The reality is we can't. There is no successful argument to show any of those things. Now, for Dan, with an impersonal universe and no God, there's no absolute context tonight either to judge whose arguments are valid. We've all got our own finite perspectives. We've all got our own minds, our own brains, our own thinking. But how do we know whose perspective is valid if there is not an ultimate context? There's a web of beliefs, but how do you judge the validity of one belief or the other about life after death without the God who gives life after death?
What?
In other words, the existentialist tradition is...
I'm not sure I follow that.
How do you evaluate the thing that we're arguing is real, except for the God that makes that thing be real? So he's basically, it's just a sleight of hand trick. All he's doing is basically saying, if the God's real, then the afterlife is real, but you're not allowed to evaluate the life and death thing that we're arguing about without the God being real. Therefore, I win. High five.
So for things to be real, it has to be because of God, and therefore God makes atheism real.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's literally true after a fashion.
This guy's terrible. This is one of the worst apologists I've ever heard. This is YouTube level of apologetics. Like I am actually fascinated that this guy got a debate. It's incredible.
According to them, he's one of their best. I don't know. This was from like 2013. It was the area where Psi 10 was like riding high on the hog and whatnot. Maybe they thought this was impressive then. I mean, there's still people who are very impressed by this. There's what's his name, and that other guy, and the animator dude. All of those people. Shit, I can't. I'm thinking of Jim Bob and
oh,
I know he
yeah,
doesn't always pre-sub, but he does
Wilson,
pre-sub
Andrew
some.
Wilson.
A little bit Andrew Wilson, although mostly he doesn't really even talk about Christianity anymore. It's more
No.
like he's more on the your body, my choice, and you can't do anything about it train lately. But there's another fella who, like, he started out as a philosophy logician, but he very quickly sank into precept, and that's like all he does anymore. But I can't think of his fucking name. Jay Dyer. There it is. Yes.
Jay Dyer, yeah.
Delay on the brain. It was in there somewhere. I just had to talk long enough to rattle it out. Oh my.
Is right in holding that what is given to us is a non-rational world, and then we have to try and rationalize that non-rational with the ideas that arise in our brain, which is a collection of atoms that shake down in a particular way, chemical reactions.
Yes.
My worldview holds, though, that nature and history are governed by God, who ordained and created them, and this is a universe of total meaning, where there is a real pre-established relationships between all the facts of our experience, and that when we learn, when we know things, we are discovering objective meaning that's actually there because it's created and governed by the providence of God. If we eliminate the God of Scripture, we're left with an apparent and infinite number of brute facts that are unrelated, unknowable, totally irrational. They're impervious to reason.
I don't know what the fuck that was about, but
I don't know. Maybe he did a Zig Heil in the middle of there or something. I don't know. Did an old Elon Musk in the middle of that?
Maybe. Although I will notice yellow light came on. Green
yellow light.
On. The yellow came on, so we're nearly done.
If you take a billion zeros, you say, well, I've got loads of information, I'm going to put all these zeros together. If you get a billion zeros, you've still only got zero. And so what we have essentially in the atheistic mind is a schizophrenic nature.
What? Okay, for a start, he shouldn't be making a medical diagnosis of anybody, okay? I don't know what this guy's background. What is it, Joe Boot?
Yeah,
Dang.
Joe Boot.
Joe Boot him out of here. Leading Christian apologist. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, he runs an institute.
It's on creation.
I think the moderator dude said it's called like the Better Than Ezra Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely.
So, something like that. Yes. I don't know. I'm just. I mean, this is just how I am these days.
Atheistic materialism is schizophrenic because on the one hand, we want to insist that there be sound thinking and that we must be rational, we must be reasonable, we must regard God as non-existent or an open question, that we can get along just... It is.
Okay, so first I just wanted to laugh at like noise endings thing. First of all, not what schizophrenic means, which is true. But schizophrenic means having hallucinations. That's how that's diagnosed. It's a visual hallucination, auditory hallucinations, whatever. If he thinks he's talking to an invisible friend, his worldview is predicated on schizophrenia.
Yeah, I think he sort of meant DID. or multiple personality, as it used to be called. You know, I think that's what he's trying to say.
Possibly, I don't know, but
I don't think that works either. But you know, I think that's what he meant rather than schizophrenia, which is, you know, but sort of saying we have to be rational. Well, I don't think we have to be rational, but being rational seems to get the best results as far as consistency and you know, being able to evaluate things as truth. You know, I think you are walking demonstration that you don't have to be rational.
oh yeah, in fact, we can't be rational all the time. But one thing that is rational, Left-Handed Jedi, gifting, sending a super chat for $2. Thank you so much, Jedi, and says,
Jedi.
and God Almighty said, "Hold my beer and watch this."
What color is your lightsaber, Jedi? I'm asking the real questions.
Oh,
Is it purple? Like, because as far as I know, Mace Windu was the only Jedi that had a purple lightsaber, basically because Samuel L. Jackson insisted upon it.
which is valid as fuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is like it's one of the Darth Maul species, but he's on the Jedi side. It looks like it's kind of pinkish.
That's purple.
Maybe. I don't know.
But I mean, in reality, what color is, you know, is his lightsaber? If it's purple, that's fine. I'd have no problem with it. Mace Windu might, but I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, Mace Windu can. He went out the window. Oh, do you suppose they knew what his fate would be when they wrote him?
I don't know. Maybe.
Mace Windu. I'm on far too many pain meds for this.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Your language is broken. Language is broken. All right, it's all over.
Holy shit. He can come and force his trademark if he doesn't like people having purple lightsabers. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I happen to have my actual lightsaber, which unfortunately doesn't work anymore. There's like something broken in the emitter or whatever. I can make it be any fucking color or even do a rainbow thing. Well, when it worked, I could. But like these basic ones that I've got by my desk here, they've got a little symbol on them that tells me which color they are. I've got a green and a blue and a red. This one is a green. For photography reasons. On a somewhat related note, I've mentioned earlier today, the Comic-Con that I do every year, first weekend in June, we already did it for the year. However, I'm trying to do more stuff on the YouTube channel that corresponds to that. I've been editing the videos for this year. Actually, I think the first one came out earlier today, the D&D tabletop game that another YouTube person named USMC Angry Veteran, he's a very angry veteran. He DM'd the game. It wasn't about angry veteran stuff. It was a really cool D&D game. And so that video is out. I'm going to have him on to do a live chat about D&D stuff over on that channel. And that's here on YouTube. It's just a little @ symbol, NOCOCON. If you would be so kind as to go over and subscribe when you get the chance. Or if you forget now, it's also linked on my website, betterthanumber.com, along with all my other socials and things. I'm trying to make that channel actually do something because I do love everybody over here. I love doing all this stuff, but I also want to talk about the nerdy stuff. And I do that here some, but like that's the main thing that's for. So I want to like do more with it. So yeah. I should have prepared that better. It's all good though.
Fine in our thinking without God, but on the other hand, the atheist is always assuming a naive realism of order and structure and design and purpose and law and even morality, because if I misrepresent Dan's views tonight, he's not going to be happy about it.
I mean, I'd say that's already a misrepresentation.
Yeah, too late.
I don't assume any of those things. Jedi says, my blade is powered by a ghost fire crystal, so it's got a silvery hue.
Yeah, I think I would say that the atheists just, oh, all right, silver. There you go. Fair enough. Fair enough. I would sort of say that, hey, as an atheist, I sort of have a level of confidence based upon the evidence given. I don't just say, hey, I absolutely know something or I have no idea about it. That's the whole point. You're sort of saying, hey, you've got to either have, I may know that the sky is blue, but I also know that, Ember's going to be here next week, right? On my channel next week. I know that.
Yeah,
The justification. Right. Sorry. Over at my channel.
I should have mentioned at the beginning, but I'm very bad at my job. We alternate every other week. So make sure you're subscribed here if you're new, of course, but also subscribe over at Mark's. He's linked in the description. He's linked in
I'm around,
the title, etc. Make sure you're subscribed over there, because the next week we'll be over at his place, and then the week after we'll be back here. So you got to follow both of us to catch all of these.
Yeah. But I will link part 1, or Ember will link part 1 or part 2 or whatever on the description. So if you are looking for the previous one, please just go to that. But I can sort of say, well, I know we're going to be on my channel with Ember this time next week, but it's sort of like this. Well, how do you know that Ember is not going to come down sick and not be able to show up? And it's like, well, I don't. But what we're doing is we're saying that I have a justified belief based upon a reasonable induction of what has happened previously. You don't have to have this all or nothing. I have absolute certainty of something, or I don't know it at all. And like Happy here, Mr. Joe Boot, he will definitely make knowledge claims based upon what happened before that will turn out not to be true. Right? Like he'll be wrong about things. So where was God on that one if you have this absolute certainty coming from God? You don't have it. You just say that God gives you the justification for all of your beliefs, but really it's not all of your beliefs, it's one of your beliefs. And that is that there's a life after death and that God is real. You're using him as a special pleading to say, hey, I can be absolutely certain because of this presupposition. It's ridiculous.
I can... I don't know. I lost the thought. It's fine. It'll probably pop back up randomly later.
So truth, these are all perpetually assumed and taken for granted. Now, there's life after death as well, because we're more than matter. This is my second argument, very quickly. If we are the product of undirected naturalistic processes, don't we have a very good reason to doubt the deliverances of our own minds? What can natural...
And we do doubt our minds. It's why we're skeptics.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you been wrong before? Yes. So why don't you doubt your mind?
Uh-huh.
Why would you think that it is always correct? Like, that seems very arrogant to me. Like, that is basically what we're getting at, the epistemology. Like, how do we know what we believe is true? What is our methodology for finding out why should we believe something or why we know something? Like, that's what we're talking about. And you're basically saying, oh, you should doubt everything you know. I do. To a greater or lesser degree. But some things are so small, they don't bother me. Like whether this is reality around me. Well, there's a lot of evidence suggests that it is reality and none to suggest that it isn't. So I don't worry about it. It doesn't concern me.
Yeah. It's sort of the corollary to induction is across the whole of my life, I have been wrong 5% of the time, or maybe even 10% of the time. But whatever the reason, there is an incidence rate of being wrong. And so I should be careful and be aware that I can be wrong in the future, and be prepared to be wrong about things that I used to believe, which has happened a lot over the course of, look at me. I've been wrong about things. The point is that's how induction works. It's like if you know the sun only comes up every other day, then that's what you go with. You don't say it's not, is it going to rise tomorrow? It's a 50-50 chance, whatever. You're like, it may rise, it may not. We'll find out when we get there. Like, you take that into account with your induction, and you can't do that with pre-sup because you're just like, I am sure from the beginning.
Realistic evolutionary account of origins give us with respect to believing that our belief forming processes furnishing us with anything like an accurate picture of the world. Our cognitive faculties, according to this view, have arisen from irrational animals. And if you have reason to doubt your belief forming process,
I don't think that's justified. Like, we maybe irrational animals. I don't know that many animals anyway, are capable of like reasoning out a deductive process. Although I've seen some dogs that are very good at figuring out where things are hidden by process of elimination, but that's neither here nor there. That doesn't mean they're irrational. That they, like bees, for example, build hives in a very rational manner. It makes a lot of sense what they do, and they organize, and they division of labor and all sorts of factors. I mean, hell, they can communicate with dances and things. And many other animals do many other similar things. That doesn't mean they're always rational. We've also seen many animals. I'm thinking of like otters playing, for example. But humans can be silly too. The capacity for rationality doesn't mean you're rational all the time. But I don't think it's called for to say that animals are irrational. I'm probably being today.
So Reverend Dr. Joseph Boot, right? He got undergraduate in theology from Birmingham Christian College. That's definitely an accredited place. Master's in mission theology with a dissertation focused on Christian cultural philosophy and apologetics from University of Manchester. Holds a PhD in Christian intellectual thought from Whitefield Theological Seminary, which is not accredited and is a distance education center.
Love it. So he's slightly more legitimate than the elder Hovind.
Yes. Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah, so Whitefield Theological Seminary is an unaccredited distance education Reformed theological seminary in Lakeland, Florida, United States.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just wondering why he was so bad if he had like a doctorate in theology. And it's like, oh, right.
Yeah. That's got to be so frustrating for other Christians, because like there's so many people who have masters or even PhDs in theology or other humanities or even religion or Christianity, to have somebody just waltz in with a diploma mill thing and be like, I'm your equal, bestie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, okay, I went to school for 8 years and had to defend a dissertation. You sent $20 to a trailer in Missoula or something.
Mm-hmm.
But we're totally on the same page.
processes, then you have reason to doubt your beliefs, including a belief that there's no life after death. The naturalistic, materialistic position is inherently irrational and can only lead to skepticism. Charles Darwin himself said this in a letter to W. Graham on the 3rd of July, 1811.
Why is Charles Darwin being brought into this?
Well, you people believe Darwin.
Darwin didn't believe in life after death. What?
Said, with me, the horrid doubt always arises whether the conviction of man's mind, which has developed from the mind of lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. Would anyone trust the convictions of a monkey's mind if there were any convictions in such a mind?
Yes. If I had to find fresh fruit, I would probably trust a monkey over a human. Sense of smell is way better.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I found out recently, within the past week, Mini Minuteman up to no good again. There's a bird, I want to say a honey thrush. That's probably
I
wrong.
told you about this.
Oh, did you?
Yes, it's the honey guy.
Okay, that's the one. It's so cool. They trained humans to hunt down honey.
Yeah. They have
like,
a certain call.
Get those bees out of the way so I can eat.
Yeah, they have a certain call that the people in Africa recognize as the bird. The bird finds a nest of bees, but it's such a tiny little bird, it would probably get stung to death by the bees. So what it does is it goes and finds humans and makes this specific call that the humans recognize as, oh, it's found a hive, and then they follow the bird, which is great at finding honey. Like it's actually really good at finding where bees are. And then they go and break into the hive and give some to the honey guide. It's a symbiotic relationship, which is wild.
Yeah.
But Mini Minuteman put it across as interesting that this bird has domesticated humans, which is just hilarious.
Yeah, it's a fun take on it, but the reason I mention it is because it goes to show that humans have learned, partly through that influence, but also from other things, that if you need something, like if you're ever lost in the wilderness, one of the things that some survival guides will tell you is watch what the other animals do.
Yep.
Because sometimes what they can eat, you can eat, and they will show you where the food is. They will definitely show you where the water is if you're not an asshole, you know?
And I mean, there's even smaller things, like if you're trekking in the wilderness and it's dead silent, there's no birds, there's no animals, you can't hear anything, be quiet. There's probably a predator around.
Or, be super noisy and wind up on the chimpanzee's TikTok. Look at this stupid human get eaten by a tiger. Or what have you.
At the validity, you see, of our rational cognition by a calculation. We've not observed the validity of our we have not observed the validity of our rational faculties. We just trust them. But is our software to be trusted if it's not created by...
What do you mean we haven't observed them? My guy, we can fly. We have technology. We know that this methodology works because it produces results. What results have actually that religion has produced? Precept, yeah, great, fantastic. That's yeah, they could have not bothered, and I would be pretty happy.
I know. It's a yeah.
My God, I don't see how. And then there is the problem that arises when we think about life after death with respect to the mind or the brain. And this is an epistemological problem. It's a problem of knowledge. Is there a distinction between our brains and our minds? Can physical properties account for thought? That is to say, can the semiotics of the words on this paper be explained by the ink and chemistry of the paper and ink? Can the meaning of the words on this page be reduced to the chemical composition of the ink and paper?
As it happens, so ever since I finished Dr. Kip's book, I've been low-key working my way through some other similar books, and yesterday I started Dan McClellan's I forget the title off the top of my head because I just started it yesterday. But it's Dan McClellan's book, and he spends a portion of it explaining that words on a page don't actually mean anything. They're scribbles. And we have agreed amongst ourselves that those squiggles represent sounds. And we have agreed amongst ourselves that the sounds, when put together in certain ways, symbolically represent concepts. So the meaning is in our brains. There is no meaning on the page. And
yeah, so
amusing.
Yeah. So semiotics is the study of signs and signals, basically how we interpret things. Now, we know that that's culturally dependent. Like a big thing in semiotics is, what does color represent? Like red represents passion, black represents death or gloom or unhappiness, white represents purity or happiness. But you will get in different cultures that meaning different things. Right. So in China, they wear white when there is a funeral kind of thing. They have different customs and different interpretations depending on what was agreed upon in your society. So, we know that semiotics is a subjective thing, that when we do make these interpretations of those words, it's why dictionaries have multiple definitions in them. Because what they're not doing is prescribing how a word should, it's describing how they're used in society, and we kind of all have an agreement on that, and that's the whole point, that it's an abstraction, that we have this concept of this symbol means this thing, and that's what I mean by transcendent. We're basically taking a scribble, as you call it, Ember, which is really fantastic, that is a that is a sign or a symbol. It's a semiotic, a heuristic to an abstraction, which is our idea within our head. Like it says cow, that will have an idea within our head of this black and white mammal with, udders, whatever, horns, etc., etc. And that will be something within reality that we're thinking of. But the cow doesn't actually exist now. It's just an abstraction. It's just an idea, right? So he seems to be having a problem with abstractions now. Because that scribble, as in Super Mario, can point to an abstraction that has no correlate in reality, right? Like, you think of a character like, Bilbo Baggins kind of thing. That's not a real person. That person doesn't exist, not in reality. But we still have the abstraction. And the symbols that we've pointed to will create that abstraction in your own head. This is the idea of memes.
Yeah, the last good idea that came out of one particular brain. Oh, I love you. Bilbo, though. He lives on in our... But, Frodo lives, too. I saw spray paint on the subway one time.
Thought material is meaning material. No, these are carriers. The paper and ink are carriers of information. They are carriers of a thought, but they are not the thought. And yet on the atheist account, this is what we're supposed to believe. Everything's understood in terms of chemistry and physics alone. But if there's no God and no soul, we're just molecules in motion. There is no real mind. We are a random firing of chemicals. And
that doesn't follow, obviously. You don't need a God to have a mind. And he's trying to say it's either my theology or emergent properties don't exist. And that's a false dichotomy. Because you have a mind, cogito ergo sum. That's demonstrable. That doesn't follow from that anybody's claim of any particular, Muslims couldn't make the same claim. The fact you have a mind is proof of Allah, and Buddhists could say the same thing, and Zoroastrians could say the same thing. And how do we know who's responsible, if any? The entailment doesn't connect.
Electrical event in our brain. In other words, our thoughts tonight are just brain gas. You're sat here tonight listening to this debate, and there's just a chemical reaction going on in your brain. It's gas. And your gaseous explosion is leading you to one conclusion, and mine is leading me to another. In such a world...
Your time's up, Joe. But also, I appreciate that he's low-key admitting that he's full of hot air. I dig that.
Two thoughts, two positions about the life after death cannot confront each other in rational discourse. Unless there's a soul, there is no rationality.
Doesn't follow. Strong ending, I suppose. Oh my goodness. So that's Joe Booth's opening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you... In theory, Dan's is also 20 minutes. Do you want to try to tackle it now or save it for next time?
I'm good to continue. I don't mind. Are you want to stop? I really don't mind. I'm more.
Oh, I can go a little longer, and we don't necessarily have to make it all the way through Dan's either. We can just
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That was painful, Rabbit 8. That was painful. Yes.
Your gaseous explosion is leading you to one conclusion.
What was it what was that thing from the void? The expulsion from the void or something? Just emanation from the void. That's right. That's how it described emanation from the void. No, I think your entire opening was an emanation from your void, sir. That is what I think.
Yeah. Oh goodness. I don't know why this is their pause screen. If somebody like hit the camera or something, I don't know.
So the second speaker then is Barker, who will argue against the proposition of life after death.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, InterVarsity and Atheist Group, Windsor, Essex County. Thank you, Joe. And as a thank you, I told the audience earlier that I was going to give you a thank you gift. That's evidence that not praying leads to success. I didn't pray, and I did win. And you won. You can roll it up. You won a what is it? Latte, whatever it is. So
Thank you very much.
that was from downstairs. You missed the joke earlier, but we had a lot of fun. Not at your expense. Millions of good people in this country and on this planet do not believe in an afterlife. Good people, moral people, happy people, people with meaning in their life, people with joy, people with love in their lives reject the idea of life after death and think that life is actually better without such a belief, that such a belief actually cheapens our lives. It actually detracts from the meaning of our lives. When I was a preacher, I used to preach a lot. I preached from every book of the Bible for 19 years. The most famous.
And that's true. And in fact, he's among his many other things, he's also one of the people involved with the Godless Gospel Project, because he wanted to keep the music, but without the nonsense. And that's really cool. That said, as much as I appreciate Dan, he seems to be doing that thing where he's refuting the other opening in his opening instead of in the rebuttal, because he's kind of doing a counter argument from consequence, and that maybe that was what he originally wrote. I don't know, but it's suboptimal in my opinion.
Book, famous verse in that book, of course, is for evangelicals is John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life, or everlasting life, as it says in the King James. I believed it. I thought the world was going to end at any time, like a thief in the night. Jesus was coming, and that he was going to take us to heaven or some other place you might end up going. I now know that all of that is not true. I used to believe it. I felt it. I preached it. I now know that there is no good reason to believe in God. None. There are anecdotes, there are arguments that are given, but there's no evidence for a God. And did we hear any tonight? No, we heard about worldviews. We didn't hear any evidence. If there were evidence for a God, think about it. By now, somebody should have won the Nobel Prize for pointing out this hitherto unknown force in the universe or cosmos. If there were real evidence, we would see it, we would have it, it would be on the table. What we have are misinterpretations through the lens of a worldview, as Joe admits. He has a pre-existing assumption, which he admits is a bias, which allows him to read books like the Bible through these glasses of his worldview and say, aha, there's truth there. I used to feel the truth, but it's not evidence for a God. There's no coherent definition of a God. No one has ever given us any definition by which we can say what we're even talking about. Believers themselves.
That's an excellent point. For a very long time, I kind of went with the concept of igtheist, which is to say no God proposition ever presented to me has been coherent even. And that's still true. I have yet to hear a coherent, just even a proposition of a God. But
well, certainly not the God of Christian, the triune God. That's certainly not coherent.
Right. That, oh my goodness, the 3-in-1 thing. It's God is the source of logic, which is why he himself gets to violate the laws of logic. And that's proof that this is the true God, probably. Yes. Identity never matter.
Disagree about the nature of this God and about its moral principles. Name any social issue of the day. You think we live in this moral universe? Name any social issue that we're struggling with. Gay marriage, abortion rights, birth control, doctor-assisted suicide, the war, stem cell research, you name it. You find good, devout, church-going, praying, Bible-believing Christians on both sides of those issues. There's no moral agreement about the nature of this God or his moral principles. In spite of the fact that Paul in the Bible wrote that God is not the author of confusion, I can think of very few books that have caused more confusion than the Bible. There is no moral cohesion to the Christian message or to any theistic message. I know there are no good.
In fact, there's quite a bit of the Bible that's anti-moral. I mean, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the slavery passages or the, you know, virgin children, prisoners of war. And so, I mean, we could go on and on and on. There's quite a lot. But if you're new, because every video is somebody's first video, first of all, please remember to subscribe. But also, you can find that big old list of Bible contradictions referenced by the two passages that fight each other on my website, betterthanember.com. There's a whole bunch of resources up there. So, you know, and I try to add more whenever I come across something cool, I put it up there. So, yeah.
Arguments for a God. The cosmological, Joe referred to some of the formation of the initial constants or some of those ideas of randomness and so on. All of these arguments for a God have been debated and debated and debated. Like Bertrand Russell said about the ontological argument, they just boil down to bad grammar is what they are, really. And if there were good arguments, we would see them, we would hear them, but we usually have our evidences from ignorance. We have God of the gap arguments. How do you explain this? How did the initial constants come to have the values they are if it was by random chance? Life wouldn't have existed without that. So therefore, since we don't have an answer, God just becomes a mystery that answers another mystery. We don't have evidence. We don't have a coherent definition. We don't have agreement among believers. We don't have any good answers to the problem of evil, for example. There have been a number of theodicies proposed for the problem of evil. All you have to do to know that there's no God, or at least no good God, walk into any children's hospital. People who take the word of God for what it says. The prayer of faith.
Problem of evil. Yep. So problem of evil, right? There's a reason why faith healers don't work in hospitals. There's a reason why that is. If they did have the power that they claim to, they'd be the ones working in hospitals and curing the sick. But unfortunately, it seems like medicine and modern medicine, and look, you might have arguments, oh, they overprescribe and things like that. Yeah, there's problems there, but it certainly is way more effective than faith healing. Way more. And, you know, the problem of evil is, why would God do that to a poor innocent child anyway? What lesson could they possibly learn from getting a fatal disease at the age of 2?
Yeah, it's no theodicy really covers things like childhood leukemia. It just, none of it. The loving God wants to punish the parents, probably, maybe.
All things whatsoever you shall ask in my name, believe, and you shall receive. Good, church-going, praying Christians, praying, please, God, please. And those kids die at the same rate as random chance. If there's a God, and we better hope there's not, he's a monster. He does not answer prayers. He does not keep his words. Such a God empirically does not exist because of the failure of prayer, the failure of prophecy. And of course, holy books like the Bible that I used to preach from, you know, if I even did have a worldview that was predisposed to believe in this theistic concept, the Bible itself doesn't hold up. It's not a reliable book. It is internally contradictory. It goes against a lot of history. It contradicts a lot of science. It has a lot of immoral things within it. The Bible itself is not a good guide for truth or for morality. If we were to follow...
Oh, for sure. Like we were saying earlier. But I do want to add a quick note, because again, I've been, going through some of these Bible scholars' books. The Bible is not a single book. As Alex O'Connor puts it, it's a library. And the books that got picked for the library, that was done by humans, for sure.
Yeah, it's a catalog.
Every Christianish culture has a different set, but they do have one thing in common across all the different sets. They all contain, I think it's Isaiah that lays out the criteria for determining a fake prophet, and they all contain the Gospels, where Jesus gives prophecy that fails the test of a fake prophet. So, even if he rose from the dead, even if that were true, he's still a false prophet according to the Bible. Oops.
All the teachings of the Bible, most of us would have to be locked up. If we were to follow Jesus' teaching, this world would be in a much worse place. If you look at the actual teachings, the Bible is not a basis for truth. No holy book is the basis for any world view when you look at it. And I used to believe in it, and I was shocked at what my rose-colored Christian glasses were allowing me to ignore about what's in that book. Any worldview that's based on the Bible is morally bankrupt and intellectually bankrupt as well. Joe is trying to frame this debate as if it were an either-or kind of thing. You have this worldview, or you have the only two options are this worldview. That's not how it's framed at all. Christians like to frame it like that because, I used to believe I had the truth and everything else out there was the opposite worldview. It's not that at all. The burden of proof in any argument is on the shoulders of the person making the claim. Joe and I both agree there's a natural universe. There's no doubt about that. There's a natural universe, there's atoms, there's forces and all that. But Joe thinks there's a supernatural realm above and beyond what we both agree, populated by these immaterial personalities like souls and spirit. He thinks there is an immaterial reality to things. He is asserting something extra above and beyond what we both agree with. Joe and I both agree that we are biological organisms. He agrees with that. We do have neurons. We do have chemicals. There's nothing really special about our bodies that we don't find out in nature anywhere else.
Yeah, and we know we can change. We can change our personalities, our feelings when we either damage the brain or have certain chemicals into it. The whole idea of sort of something like an antipsychotic is that you can change the brain by changing the chemicals. You can change the thinking. So why does that work? If your soul is independent and has its own sort of agenda and thoughts, what would putting different chemicals in the brain change? Why does it change?
It's pretty neat. I've heard so many arguments along those lines that oh, well, the brain is like a radio antenna receiving the messages from the soul, and if you fuck with the receiver, then you'll get the signal will be more or less interfered with, and so that's why. But a total personality shift, from some traumatic brain injuries, are we picking up a completely different angel? I mean, soul? I mean, demon? Whatever.
Processing the functioning of the mind. But Joe believes, in addition to what we both agree with, he believes there's something else. He believes that there is a thing called a spirit or a soul that transcends the body. We are biological animals is what we are. We function much like our other animal relatives on this planet. Yep. Our brains are bigger. We're special in many ways, but other species are special in their own ways. And I'm glad I'm a human being and not a sea slug at the bottom of the ocean. Although in the sea slug, you have the same chemical processes. When a sea slug dies, does its spirit live on somewhere? I mean, is there life after death for other organisms? Why are humans special? Because we have this illusion in our mind of consciousness. Joe has the burden of proof that there is life after death, and he should at least attempt to give us some evidence. He mentioned the resurrection, and I wish he'd gone into greater detail about the resurrection, because the resurrection is not good evidence. The resurrection of Jesus in the Bible is probably the worst example anyone could possibly offer for the truth of the Bible. And that's not an exaggeration. It's because most Bible stories are given once or twice. The resurrection is given at least 5 times, and you can compare them. You can see how contradictory they are. They are discrepant. Yep. They don't agree. Even conservative scholars agree that it's bad history. There are many other reasons why the resurrection of Jesus Christ is probably the weakest argument anyone could offer for life after death.
Yeah, so the thing is that, when you have the 4 books, for instance, who the women told afterwards, because in one, they told no one. In one, they went running straight to the apostles and told them. Like, they're contradictory. You can't have both. What did they do after they found this out? Some had them going to Galilee. Some had them going around the city. And those two things are contradictory.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the first of all, I see Dr. Kip. We were just talking about you earlier. Maybe your ears were burning. Jesus' resurrection, the fact that he didn't go to heaven. I mean, yes, I get the whole he ascended later thing, but like what people can show, assuming the stories were just taken at face value, is that he didn't go to heaven. He came back here. I feel like that's significant.
Used to say that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. If we don't have evidence for it, then we non-believers can just say whatever our worldview is, you haven't made your case. You have the burden of proof. There's reasonable doubt. Therefore, I'm not going to believe what you are asking me to believe. I'm not going to put on your worldview glasses. What is it exactly that survives death? What is Joe talking about when he's talking about life after death? What are we discussing here? A soul, an immaterial consciousness? In order for anything to exist, anything at all, we have to distinguish it from not existing. We have to be able to measure it in some way. In order for something to exist, we have to say how big it is, or how much it weighs, or how much space it occupies, or how long it is in. We have to have some way of identifying it. Otherwise, we're just using a word. The word spirit just becomes blah. What does spirit mean? What does soul mean? Science has shown us that there's an exquisite
How do you falsify
dependence.
these things? Like, if you say, oh, you have a soul, but you can't possibly investigate it, you can't find out in any way, then how do you know you have one? Right? Unfalsifiable things are not able to be investigated. So you're basically saying, hey, just trust me, bro, it's true. But you can't investigate it. It can't possibly be discovered because you can't falsify it. That's the problem. I could say that, hey, it's not actual soul. It is the force from Star Wars that floods through your body and, does all of these things. How do you falsify that? You can't. So if you can't falsify it, you can't investigate it, and you can't know that it's true.
How it reminds me that I forget the exact name of the thought experiment, but it's the zombie thing. Presume there's a zombie. Yeah, zombies running around, NPCs, if you will, who behave exactly like people who have a soul, only they don't have a soul. How do you tell the difference? What can we investigate to find out who has a soul and who doesn't?
On the brain of consciousness, we have no evidence at all that consciousness can exist apart from a functioning brain. The mistake that Joe's making, and the mistake that a lot of theists and Christians and other theists make, is they think that consciousness is a thing. Joe is imagining that consciousness is this item, this immaterial object, or some might say the same thing about the word mind or about the word spirit. There's this thing in the universe. But consciousness is not a thing. It is not an identity. Consciousness is a function. Mind is a function of an organ that's functioning. If I have a soul, then where is it? How big is it? How do you identify it? I'm going to walk across the stage and I'm going to come back here, and I want you to watch me when I do this, all right? Watch my, presuming that there's a brain inside of the skull. Watch this. Okay, you saw my head walk across and come back. What happened to my soul during that time? What happened to it? Did it follow along? Did that soul that supposedly survives death, is it trapped inside of my skull? Did it kind of closely follow or not? How would I know, what is it, this thing that's supposedly surviving the death of this animal body of ours? What is it? How do you know what that thing is? Most scientists agree that
if we go with
go ahead.
The ancient idea of a spirit, I guess what you might call a soul, the words have different meanings, but are also kind of the same thing in the modern conception, was the breath of life, right? So it's your breathing. So when you exhale and the breath goes out, does your soul leave your body? And then when you breathe in, it comes back in? Is it like a cat? Is it constantly going in and out?
I don't know. I think that there's other really worse questions for theists about a soul, like what happens when you have conjoined twins? Like, do they share a soul? Is there a soul for each of them? What about just ordinary twins? What about twins and one dies in the womb? What happens then?
That is a difficult one. I've
If
been
we clone
asking
somebody, do they get a new soul?
what about when twins merge, right? Like two
Right.
twins become a single fetus.
Yeah, one
Which
eats the other,
twin
basically.
soul gets the body, or what happens? Yes, Sapphire. What about chimeric twins? That's what I've been wondering ever since I found out about my own thing. I was like, do I have two souls? I probably do,
Maybe.
because I'm like, I mean, I'm super holy, you know?
Consciousness, mind, ideas, dreams, thoughts are functions of a functioning brain. Just like when you unplug the computer, that software, that functioning of that machine that almost looks like you're interacting with something alive, where does it go? Where does the soul of the computer go when you unplug it? It doesn't go anywhere. There is no soul. There is no thing there. It's the functioning that makes it happen. These neurons that evolved over millions of years are functioning.
Not to mention our question
When I
that
walk across-
animals have souls, you know, which they don't ever answer because it provides really awkward questions.
Yeah. The entailments.
Mhm.
If it has a tail, does it have an entailment?
That stage, it wasn't just my brain. Another organ was going across, my stomach. My stomach walked across and it came back again. What happened to digestion? Did you notice what happened? What did digestion follow with my stomach, or didn't it? Digestion is not a...
I feel like I've heard him make this argument before,
Yeah,
but again, it's
yeah.
been a year since we had him on, so he may reuse some talking points from opening to opening. But yeah, like
you could
it's
say
a
the
great
same about
demonstration.
you could say the same about the mind. How did the where did the mind go? Did the mind get left behind? You know, it's just this emergent property we ascribe to a number of different functions and processes working throughout your body. Same as digestion. Like, it's not an actual thing in and of itself.
Yeah. Our words describe things, they are not the thing.
Digestion is a...
I think that's actually the original idea behind reification, is you're taking an abstract concept and trying to make it real. You're trying to realify it. You're trying to make digestion a specific thing you can like grab and hold and move around, but it's just a term for the totality of processes.
Label, a description for the functioning of a bodily organ. There's no such thing as a capital D digestion in the cosmos, of which, when our bodies die, that digestion is going to survive the stomach, right? Consciousness, mind, thoughts are functions. They are not things. We don't ask. It's a silly question to ask, what happens to digestion when the body dies? What a dumb question, right? What happens to consciousness when the brain dies? What a dumb question. The brain stops functioning, the consciousness doesn't exist anymore. The plug is pulled. Of course, we have this illusion in our minds that somehow this consciousness of ours is some kind of a thing, but we know how unreliable that is. You wake up in the middle of the night screaming because you had a...
Well, I think there's an important distinction to be made here. Our consciousness is a series of mental processes, but it's also related to our internal experience, our qualia. And that's really the part that people get hung up on when they're thinking about life after death. They don't really care about whether they're technically conscious. They want to know what's going to happen to their perspective, their experiences. Not just the experiences they had, but their sense of continuing to experience. I don't know that we need to get super focused on the consciousness for that.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
think that's...
I just felt like the distinction needed to be distinctified. I'm just coining whole words now. Watch out.
Nightmare. You had a very real experience. Your palms are sweating. Your heart's pounding. You woke up the house. Something very real happened. There's no doubt about it. You had a very powerful experience, but there's no boogeyman crawling in the window. It's in your mind. It's all happening in the mind as a function of what your mind's doing. We all know that dreams don't represent reality. They might reflect it a little bit. We all know that near-death experiences don't reflect a reality either. don't represent reality either. They might represent certain cultural aspects. And we see with near-death experiences that there's a cultural component to it. In India, they see Yamraj, the bookkeeper. In Thailand, they see Yamatuts. And in the Western world, they tend to see Jesus. So our brains, being conditioned by our culture, by the society we live in, tend to build kind of a reflection of the reality we're in. It doesn't mean that there's such a thing as a soul. During my rebuttal time, I'm going to address some of the specific remarks that Joe made. But since we know that there is no evidence for a God, no good argument for a God, there's no coherent definition of a God, there's no agreement among believers about a God, we know these things.
Well, it's just
we know
sort of, you know, this is kind of the really shifty thing that Precept does. It goes, well, I presuppose there's a God, now prove me wrong. The problem with that, as with all unfalsifiable claims, is that it is the burden of proof on the one making the claim. The positive claim has the burden of proof. Because if we did it the other way round, I could say, well, I believe in the Blarney stone, a magical stone that created the universe. Now prove me wrong. And if you can't prove me wrong, then you have to believe it under your own consistency, because you're saying, you know, it should be the other person. Like, sort of, you claim what is true and it's up to the other person. It's the same reason as why in a court we give somebody the presumption of innocence. It should be up to the prosecution to show that that person is guilty of doing the crime, just as it should be the person that is claiming a God is true should be the one to show he is guilty of existing, right? It's the same premise, because if we just assume the other way, we would believe inconsistent things.
I do love, was it Josh McDowell who came up with that guilty of existing thing? It's, I'm very amused by it.
There's no need for a God, because you can have a life of value and meaning and joy and purpose and all of that in a meaningless universe. There is no meaning of life. There is no meaningful universe, and it's good that there's not. If there were a purpose,
in fact, we can demonstrate that, because if there were a meaning, it would be demonstrable and it would override all meanings that we come up with. The fact that we can come up with our own meanings is a demonstration that there isn't an ultimate meaning.
Purpose and meaning of life, that would mean you and I are what? Slaves, servants, secondary, soldiers. We're part of something above us. It would cheapen our lives to think that somehow there's this overriding meaning up there that I have to fit into, like, you know, a good humble servant or a good child doing what the daddy wants me to do. The fact that the universe itself is completely meaningless, that is meaningless, because meaning can only come from within a functioning brain, functioning mind. The fact that there's no meaning of life is wonderful. That doesn't mean there's no meaning in life. Meaning in life comes from solving problems.
Also, I'm just random things are churning up from the back of my mind from earlier in my life. Apparently, I've referenced too many earlier things. When I was a freshman in high school, I was asked to write a poem about a tree, and somehow or another in the thought processes, as I was writing the poem, it came to me that there is more than one meaning in life. Like, for example, for the tree, like with all biological life, there's that impetus to reproduce. And so that's I suppose, as close to an ultimate meaning as you can get. You're a biological organism. You have a below instinct level drive to reproduce, however it is you go about doing that.
Right.
So that's like, well, it's more like a purpose to life rather than a meaning in life, but same general concept. But there's also to grow, and there's also to gather food. If in the case of a tree, you deploy your solar panels and do the photosynthesis thing, but it's the same for us. We have to find food. You could argue that's to drive the ability to reproduce, but it's still a separate itemized priority.
Right.
And so on and so on. And so I started to believe at that point that it's not possible for there to be one purpose in life, because everything already has multiple purposes. And those of us who have minds are able to add additional priorities to the existing list.
Oh, sure. So I think it's not just about purpose. I think they use it as shorthand for some ultimate purpose, some transcendent purpose. But I don't know if there is any purpose to the universe, to anything. Like, just because there isn't doesn't mean that we can't have purpose in our lives. Like, that's the thing. I think it's just sort of silly that you sort of say, well, if there's not a transcendent purpose, if there's not this ultimate purpose, then there's no purpose at all. It's like, well, no, my life has purpose. There's definitely things that I do want in life, and things that I don't want to be tortured, as an example. Like, that's a purpose. That's meaning. I can change my life so I'm not in prison or things like that. Like, just because there is no ultimate purpose doesn't mean that you have no purpose whatsoever.
Yeah. If we suddenly discovered there is a purpose to the universe, and it's to make black holes, that doesn't have anything to do with how we live our lives. So we would keep doing it, probably.
Fighting hunger, fighting predation, fighting disease, fighting war, whatever there's a problem to solve in your life, then that's where meaning comes from. Meaning is not something up there that we think, oh, the universe has to have meanings. As if you even ask the question, does the universe have meaning, you are smuggling your conclusion into your premise. You are begging the question. You are assuming in the question that the universe must have some kind of a mind of its own. And the fact that we don't exist within a context of meaningfulness is turning things upside down. If there's a God, what context does he reside within? How does he decide what is right and wrong? How does he know? Is he just hanging out? What meaning is there in his life? If it's okay for there to be this.
I like that question. What meaning is there in God's life? Depends on the God, doesn't it? But for the God described by the Christians, what's the point of anything? He's the most nihilistic of all.
That brute fact that has no context of its own, no meaning above its own. If it's okay for you to put on that worldview and say you can refer to that brute fact, well, why not just refer to the brute fact of stopping with what we do know, that the universe itself, mindless and meaningless, can contain meaning within it because of the functioning brains of ours. When you die, that's it. Your digestion will cease to exist. When you die, that's it. Your consciousness will cease to exist. But we live now. If life is eternal, then life is cheap. We give more value. We give more meaning to things that are brief and precious. If the fact that life is going to end, the fact that it's going to be over, that there is no life after death, actually imbues greater meaning in our lives, not to our lives. We don't need meaning to our life, but in our lives. It gives us greater meaning because we realize how precious this life is, not to be sacrificed on the altar of bowing down to some dictator who declares that you need to set aside one day of the week to worship. Otherwise, all the fields are going to be scorched if you don't bow down and kiss his toes and worship his father's vanity. That's not where morality comes from. The fact that there is no evidence for a life after death actually makes us have more meaning within our own personal lives. Now, I know Dr.
I would
Zeus did
agree
not
with
say
that.
this.
I would agree with that. Like, not having, like, a lot of people I see in religion are just they're waiting for they're just hoping that the world ends and they have heaven afterwards, and they sort of miss out a lot in their lives because they're just, oh, this is just a terrible waiting point until I go to heaven kind of thing. It's like, yeah, or you could make your life better. If you don't think there's a heaven afterwards, you actually care a lot more about how good your life is now.
Yeah, I often run into people who make that there's no atheists in foxholes argument. In my experience, there's no believers in foxholes, because when it comes time to actually put your life on the line, the believers also don't want to die and go to paradise.
People attribute it to Dr. Zeus, and I'm not quite sure who said it, but it's a great quote. It's along the lines of what Bertrand Russell said, that happiness isn't any less happy because it doesn't last forever. The quote that probably Dr. Zeus didn't say is that don't be sad because it's over. Be glad that it happened. We get to
Absolutely. That's a great I've I've had a bunch of relationships go bad over the course of my life. Sometimes when things end and they feel so sad, and I'm like, don't be sad, because it's done now, but we got to do something really cool. Life is like that too. But I chuckle because it took me a long time to find a therapist that I could actually connect with, because I needed somebody who, like, I could talk to on the phone, who took my insurance and would telecommute and all of that stuff. And so it took a while. And when I finally found one that actually worked with me, I told her that. She hadn't heard it before somehow.
We get to have our lives now, and that's what's important. That's what precious. That's what we all know. We don't know if there's a God. We don't know if there's an afterlife. We haven't heard any evidence for either of them. We've only been instructed to pick a certain pair of glasses to put on. But I insist that that is the wrong way to look at this debate. It's not an either or. It's him failing to meet.
Where does God go when he dies? Because obviously he must die. I mean, first of all, he did. He was. If Jesus was God, then God did die. But also, if his life is if he never dies, then his life is meaningless. And to say that God's life is meaningless, that has rather cosmic levels of implication, doesn't it?
The burden of proof and provide evidence and solid argument for the deity and the afterlife that he is arguing. And I think I'm going to cut it short here in the interest of time. We decided to cut our whole debate short. So I'll come back to rebuttal later.
Okay, and that's going to be the starter rebuttals. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, sure. What is we at? 43, 47? Cool.
Yeah.
I'll just pop it in our chat. That's fine.
I'll put the time. Okay, yeah. Cool beans, cool beans. So did you want to go a little bit further? Did you want to wrap up here?
We can wrap up here if you want. That's fine. That's a good sort of cutting point. We're kind of about a third the way through. So I'm not sure if any of the end is questions or anything. This seems like a good point. We've done both the introductions, so it seems like a good point. Look, Dan's was really quick. It was really quick. He probably has a lot more for the rebuttal, but this is the kind of real sort of intellectual gymnastics you have to do with presup. You have to sort of get this God thing established as a presupposition, as sort of an axiom. Then you've got to link all these things to it. It just, if the thing is it's undermined by just one thing, well, you've got to show your God exists before you can claim it exists. That's it. And someone in chat brought up impossibility of the contrary. It's the most nonsensical statement, because the thing that makes the contrary impossible is the God, the thing that you're trying to prove in the first place. So you're saying that God is, I'm not sure if they were around for the earlier when Joe Boot said, the impossibility of the contrary is because God is the reason. God exists because of it's a circular argument. It's viciously circular because both directly hinge upon the other being true. So this whole idea that, I presuppose God, so I'm right because I can't be wrong. It's like, well, that's your claim. Your claim is that the God exists. You're basically begging the question. Begging the question is essentially assuming something to be true without demonstrating it all. So basically just saying, hey, the God exists and everything else is impossible hinges upon begging the question. It's a logical fallacy. And you can do it with anything. It's impossible that the contrary of the Blarney Stone exists because the Blarney Stone makes it impossible, and I'm presupposing the Blarney Stone exists. Bang. That's precept, baby. Actually, I think our Breakfast Taco does one where he basically presupposes a naturalistic, materialistic universe and then argues for the impossibility of the contrary. God can't exist because I've presupposed that everything's material and natural.
Yeah, I remember when he was developing that, he ran some of the cosmology and astrophysics past me. I'm like, you don't actually need this.
You don't need it,
but I appreciate you looking into
it. Yeah, anything that violates it, you just say no. That's true, but it's from a materialistic, naturalistic universe, and instead of God. Like, this is the thing. You basically use a reductio ad absurdum with it, and a reductio ad absurdum, There's a few different ways to do that, but one of them is replacing your argument with the contrary and seeing if it works just as well. And they'll throw their hands up in the air and say, oh, but I don't believe it's the naturalistic universe, so you can't do it. No, it's just the contrary. So if I can replace God with the Blarney Stone, right, in a pre-sup argument, and it makes just as much sense, that is reduced to absurdity because both can't be true. The God can't have created the universe and the Blarney Stone can't have formed the universe. Both can't be true. And I can do that with anything. So this is why it's a terrible argument.
Yeah, it hadn't actually occurred to me all this time for years. In fact, someone just commented on my first Laugh at Presups video because Dave Warnock and Apostasy they engaged with a presup on a call-in show, and Stacy asked me, like, how should I have handled this? And so I reviewed the video, and Dave Warnock just laughed at the presup the whole way through, and I'm like, exactly that. So that was a while ago, but all this time in that first video, I talked about how it's a game of Mad Libs and you can just replace God with Yo Mama.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It didn't occur to me that's
a reductio. Yeah.
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 I never made that connection. That's fun.
Yeah. That's one way to do a reductio. You just replace it with the contrary. And if it breaks down to an absurd thing, like absurdity is like a contradiction, a logical contradiction, right? So it's a logical contradiction that God created the universe and your mama created the universe. So if your mama works in the argument just as well, it doesn't necessarily, like when you show a fallacy in an argument, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong, right? It just means you shouldn't listen to that argument, right? Like if somebody does use a presup argument and you show that it's an absurd argument, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. It just means that's a bad argument.
Yeah, a person can have the correct answer, but from the wrong argument. But it's like when you get math wrong. It doesn't mean the answer's wrong, but you shouldn't believe the answer's right because the equation is wrong.
The best one of that I got was Ken Ham arguing why the Durham-Pinder site was not the site of the Noah's Ark landing. And he got the right answer for the dumbest reason ever. It was because there were fossils underneath the Ark. And if it was really the Ark, there wouldn't be fossils underneath it.
I don't think, I mean, he is correct. That is definitely not the Ark, but like, I don't think even his own argument follows because the Ark landed after the flood. So if he's right about all fossils being the result of the global flood, that's not contradicted by that being the Ark.
But even if even if the fossils were buried fast and did this extreme fossilization rate that they claim, don't forget that it wasn't that the waters just receded instantly. The mountain of Ararat, and then the Ark landed on the mountain of Ararat, and then over the course of like a week, the waters receded after that. So there's no possible way to have the time for a fossil to fossilize like in layers underneath the Ark at that point, because that had to come later. Things died, settled at the bottom, the waters went down, and then they fossilized.
So it couldn't have been like God magic extra fast fossilization.
I mean, if you're going to use God magic, just about anything could have happened, right? Like, let's face it. Like when it's like this, oh, well, the laws of nature don't apply anymore because God's using magic or miracles, whatever you want to call it, a violation of the laws of nature, then why even have a flood at all? But yeah, Ken Ham got the right answer for the dumbest reason ever.
Stopped clock twice a day.
Yeah, and even though he's right, that is not the remains of the Noah's Ark. You know, you should reject the argument. Like, that's not the reason, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong. He's right. It's not the remains of the Ark. Yes.
Well, folks, It's been an adventure. Before we go,
It was fun. It was fun. Sorry, I was in chat arguing a lot. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. So I apologize if I neglected my wonderful co-host in having doing that.
No, it's fine. People sometimes ask why I let trolls like that wander around. Partly because I try to reserve bans and things for people who are abusive, and as long as a person isn't being abusive, even if they're a little frustrating, I tend to try to give them some grace. I'm pretty sure that person is more bot than human, but that's neither here nor there. But sometimes it's fun to let off steam with a person who's just being a target.
Cyborg, is that you?
Cyborg?
Yeah, more bot than human.
Oh, yeah, could be. No, that's weird. I'm actually a lot of other long stories, but I have a new cosplay from the DC universe that I'm planning to get out soon. Yeah, cool. It's cool. super basic. Y'all are going to be like, really, Amber? But really, it's simple enough I can manage it even though I'm broke.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, speaking of broke, kind of, Miranda fundraiser pinned in the side chat. If you're watching in the future, spread it around, share it, post about it on the socials, etc. We're making really good progress. If you're just tuning in later, our friend Miranda, who's usually in all of our chats all of the time, wonderful person, has had to have lots of surgeries. The week before this, she had to have 5 surgeries in 5 days. She had more surgeries this past week. She's having a really tough time. Her fundraiser is going pretty well. It'd be really cool if we could actually hit 100% of the goal. We're currently at 71%. So give if you can, share if you can't, put it everywhere, and just keep bringing it up. And I'm confident we'll get there. We've already come so much further than any fundraiser I've ever seen this community do. And it's really cool. So yay. All right. I think that just about does it. Thank you all so much for joining.
That was fun.
Thank you, Jedi, especially for super chats and gift memberships and so forth. I always appreciate those. And all of you folks for joining and stopping by and raising hell and all the wonderful things you do. And Mark, of course, for being here with me.
Oh, my pleasure. I always love it.
Thank
you for being such a gracious host. Gracious.
Oh, here we've been in heaven this whole time, because I've got the cloud background. I originally thought I was torn between doing the clouds and the fiery depths of hell, because it's an afterlife.
That's a little much. That's a little much. Yeah.
It's kind of
intense.
I
think the clouds are good.
It's actual footage of heaven, folks. It's not all white pearly gates that you might be led to believe.
Yeah. This is God when he's feeling cranky.
It's true, when he hasn't had his morning coffee. Alrighty, folks. Bunch of goodies coming up. Of course, Mark's got Fundamentalist Fails, Is God the Asshole, and we'll be back over at his place next week. So make sure you subscribe over there. Me, I'm going to be all over the damn place. I'm going to be on Skeptic Haven tomorrow for Let's Talk with Jess from How to Rule an Asteroid. We're going to be doing solstice stuff. I've got at least one transfactual on the burner, and I'm working on some like normally produced videos. So, keep an eye out for those. You never know when those might pop up. And the show's starting over on NocoCon when I can, and probably other places. So, keep a weather eye. Thank you all so much for joining. Until next time, try not to die. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for May. Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Maya Adkisson, Robin Webster, Lilith, Ember Lynn, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Thriver Scapegoat, Katie Bluebird, Noise Ending, The Godless Engineer, Secular Feelinist, and Elira the Free. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.